Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It's Friday, best day of the week.
You ain't got no job, and you ain't got... Wait, no, that's different. That's something different.
Well, I mean, I currently don't have a... Well, no, this is a job, so I guess we're good. This is a job.
Okay.
Anyway.
Friday reference went.
I know. No, I got it, but I was just, I got the reference. We're good.
It's Irish Breakdown mailbag time, people. That's the moral of the story.
That's all I'm saying. That's Brian. That's Trevor. We're here to go whatever direction y'all want to go because it's the Friday free-for-all mailbag. You guys run the show, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's my first Friday free-for-all mailbag in quite some time, but the first of many here over the next few weeks, so I'm fired up and ready to roll. So, but gentlemen, how we doing today? We ready to do this?
I'm good. I'm ready. If y'all want to put a question in, y'all know what to do. Put an MB on there or put a mailbag emoji on there. That way we know that that's a question, not just normal chatter. And if you want to get thrust to the top of the board, you can get thrust to the top of the board by simply putting a super chat in there.
Super chat.
Greatly appreciate that as well. But of course, you don't have to do super chats. We appreciate any questions. We appreciate y'all joining us. It can be anything Notre Dame football related. It can be anything recruiting related, college football related. We'll try to stick to those topics today, but a couple things we let slide. Apparently, Trevor became an Indiana Pacers fan 5 minutes ago now that they're in the finals. I'm totally kidding. Trev lives in Indianapolis. If you have a Pacers question, you can go ahead and throw that in there. We'll let Trev
2-1 or is it 1-2?
2-1.
2-1, sirs.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So go ahead and get them in there. I'm ready to rock and roll, Trev. You ready to roll? Vince, Trev's always ready. Vince, I know you're always ready.
Dude, this is my favorite day of the week. Let's go, man.
So let's get this thing going. Speaking of super chats, getting thrown to the top of the list, my guy Rob Osgood gets us started off right.
Thanks, Rob, for the super chat. Hello. You are the king.
Think about that. When we do the three, we do postseason, we always have the issue where the person at the bottom is covered up, and I didn't want it to be like Trev's eyeballs right above the thing the whole time, or his hair above the thing the whole time. So we'll go ahead and hook it up this way, so we'll have some fun with it. But yeah,
should have shaved today. That's what I'm saying.
It's all good.
But anyway,
man.
Rob,
up to some personal.
Thanks to Rob for the super chat. It says you are the king of college football. What would the penalty be for teams that go over the quote-unquote salary cap?
Well, if I'm the king of college football, there is no salary cap. I've said this before. I believe that in the perfect way to do this for college football, guys, is to have a two-tiered system as far as how players get paid. The first tier is part of the rev share. It is an equal split amongst all teams that then gets distributed amongst your players evenly. And that's kind of how it goes. So it's not, you don't have to be responsible for trying to give your star quarterback more money via the rev share. It's just, here's how much we get. We get, let's say it's 15 million. We have 105 spots. If you have less than 105 spots, then, that's fine, but you can only give out what 105, 15 million divided by 105 would be. You don't want to spend all of that. You don't have to spend all of that, but just know that you're probably going to suck. I would actually make rules saying if you get this money for rev share, you have to spend all of it on student athletes. You can't not spend it. You can't say, well, we're going to pay players this amount. If you get that amount of money, you got to pay it. That's just the reality.
Now, are you talking about pay it in salary or pay it in like facilities and things for student athletes?
No, because that's already got to be part of your other budget.
Okay.
This is a rev share that goes directly to the players per the house settlement. And that's what that's going to be. So I would say that's a flat rate that you have to distribute amongst all. You can determine what sports you're going to give it to. And like I saw that Oklahoma the other day announced, their AD announced that they're only going to give basically rev share money to 6 sports. It's football, men's basketball, baseball, softball, women's gymnastics, and I think maybe women's basketball. I think it's like 3 men's sports, 3 women's sports. And if you know anything about Oklahoma baseball or softball, Oklahoma softball is legit. Like, they're a revenue driver, I would imagine. Like, that's a big time. My niece, who lives in Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Virginia now, my niece Layla is a really good softball player, really good athlete. She was on the varsity basketball team this past year in the 8th grade. She's on the varsity softball team in the 8th grade. Like, she's a legit athlete, just like her mother and her uncle. But she's talking about like 2 years ago, like, oh, I want to go play softball at Oklahoma. Like, what do you know about Oklahoma? You've never been to Oklahoma a day in your life, but she sees them on TV all the time, just hitting bombs. Like, they're a really good team. So look, that's the only sports that are going to get part of this rev share. However you do it, though, you've got to split it up evenly amongst those teams. There's no giving more to this. Then the second system I have is NIL. And I don't believe there should be a cap on NIL. I see these things about fair market value and algorithms about this. I think that's absolute nonsense. I think what they should be focusing on, and what I would focus on if I was the king of college football, would be more so making sure that that the contracts are legitimate, in that there's guarantees being given to the players if they do certain activities. You can't just give a player money because you want him to play quarterback at your school. There has to be some sort of exchange. There has to be some usage of his name, image, or likeness by your institution or by your business that we view as somewhat legitimate. Like, it can't just be 1 5-minute, meet and greet and then you got to go. There has to be some level of it. But then again, if a business views giving $1 million to a quarterback and all they want in return is 3 or 4 meet and greets, or come out on some Saturday for an hour when they're trying to sell cars, let's say, and they view that as valuable enough, because they then should be able to say, and we talked about this the other day, I look at it like this: when the football team where my business is successful. So Vince, we're both familiar with, Trev, you are too. You're local too. If Gurley Leap says, hey, it's where we bought our most recent car. If Gurley Leap says, hey, you know what? If Notre Dame football is good, it's good for the whole community. It helps the restaurant industry. It helps the taxes from the city. It helps hotel industry. It helps all these different things, right? Because there's all these people coming. There's all these type of things. We get playoff games. That's a huge boost to the economy. And if the people in the economy and in our community are making more money, they're going to be buying cars from us. They're going to be buying newer cars. They're going to be buying cars that cost more. We're not going to be having some of the, it's going to be a strong position. That's what I believe. And I think me giving $3 million or $2 million to this 5-star D tackle is worth it, as long as there's some sort of deal where he has to do certain things, where we get to use his name, image, and likeness for certain sales. He has to do, like, let's say to me, it's like he needs to do 3 meet and greets. He needs to do 1 TV ad and 1 radio spot. And that to me is worth it, because getting this football player, this $2 million, if the football team is good, is going to be way more than $2 million in return if our football team is good, or our basketball team is good, or whatever. And that's going to help the local economy, which then in turn helps my business. Why should you put a cap on that? Why should you tell that business owner what he can or cannot spend on a student athlete? I don't think they should do that. So I would not have a salary cap. I would say, this is how much you're spending on your football team. This is your percentage of the rev share. You can't go beyond that in regard to how you spend for your student athletes. You can determine how much of it you want to give to football and other sports. I know there's some sort of, Title IX rules or something, I'm sure, they go into where you've got to give to certain sports, but that's what I would do. I'm not a fan of this cap. It's just another way that the institutions are trying to say, well, we want to put a cap on this because we want some of these big money people to start giving money back to us and not the student athletes. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's so easy to see right through it that this is just another attempt by the power conferences, which are the schools which are affiliated with the NCAA, to basically say, hey, look, we don't want to have to share this revenue. We think the players are getting too much, and so we're going to try to put caps on it. And they're just going to get sued again, and then we're going to be back at this crap all over again. And it's just like, just stop. Put a cap on the one thing, let them do whatever they want to do on the other thing. Just make sure that they're legitimate NIL deals in regard to, there has to be some sort of give and take. As long as it's that, enforce that. Don't, have a compliance person at each school says you need to mandate that this is going on. Otherwise, then there are penalties. If you have players that are just getting money and not doing anything in return, then that player has to then pay that money back to that entity, or your school can't participate in name, image, and likeness, or you can, whatever the case may be. That's all I would try to enforce. I would not be trying to enforce a salary cap, because that is simply an end around to making sure that more of the money goes back into the coffers of the school and not into the pockets of the players.
Yeah, that's fair enough. If I were the king of college football, I would follow something extremely similar, almost identical to what you just got done talking about, Brian. I've said it before on this show. I think with rev sharing and that model combined with NIL, it's very similar to how salespeople get paid. The revenue sharing is your base salary. And no matter who you are on the team, whether you're the 5-star starting quarterback or you are a 4th-string walk-on DB, you get the same salary. But for the Jeremiah Loves of the world, the Leonard Moores of the world, like in sales, your top level earners, that's when NIL comes into the conversation, and that's your commission check. And so that is how I would structure it, to not put a cap. I don't think NIL should have a cap. I think that's silly. But I'm in the same lines as you are, Brian.
What say you, Vince? You same page?
I'm not going to add anything to what you guys already said. There needs to be accountability for the NIL stuff. I've been saying that since the beginning. And if they can somehow do that, that's what I would like to see.
I love that. Accountability, not a cap. Yes.
Right.
Make sure these are legitimate NIL deals where you are taking advantage of your name, image, and likeness.
Right.
You're not just being given $3 million to come play football.
Right. Because look, you've got a professional model sitting right in front of you with all of the professional sports teams, right? Caitlin Clark isn't making millions of dollars with her salary. She's making millions of dollars with her endorsements. Right. And those are legitimate endorsements. The kid should be allowed to get endorsements. If companies want to use you, then that by all means, you should be able to do that. But it's completely separate from your quote unquote salary, which is what the rev share is.
Right. It can't just be a collective giving a guy $1 million.
100%.
Nothing.
I hate the blank check idea that we've got going on with recruiting and all of these different promises that are being made and all these different things. If it's a legitimate situation where it's from an endorsement side of things, then yes, there's going to be the give and take. There just needs to be some accountability to that, so it's not a blank check. That's my biggest thing. If they can do that, then I'm all for it. That's called capitalism. I'm cool with that. Like, if we can make more money at Irish Breakdown by selling advertising and doing different things, doing live reads, we're going to do that. Don't put a cap on us. That's what we're going to do. Same thing with that. I'm all about it. That's fine. I'm just waiting for all the NIL deals at Division II. When that happens, give me a call.
But at that level, it's actually kind of interesting. It's actually at that level, it is more like true NIL.
That's true.
When I was in college, I remember that they had me before practice one time, or I can't remember, I was getting interviewed for something, and they had me do an ad read for their radio show. And I don't even remember the name of it back in Salisbury, Maryland, but they're like, hey, this is Brian Driscoll, quarterback of the Salisbury Seagulls, catch us on blah, 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 something like that.
Right.
And like now it'd be like, okay, here's $500 and you're going to do this thing for us. That's what you're actually going to get more true NIL at that level, I would imagine, than you're going to be getting at the Division I level, where it's just boosters and collectives giving kids money. That's what I'm against. I'm not against the kids getting money.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's good for them to be able to say, hey, look, make as much money as you can, but understand that you're not just getting this money for free. There's something on your end that you're responsible for. You're taking this money and what I'm giving you in return. I think there's so many great business lessons you can teach young people by doing these type of things. Listen, this guy's wanting to give you this amount of money, but he wants you to advertise for this. And you say, you know what? Like for example, I won't give specifics, but Vince, you've known about this because I've talked to you about these things, but there's been multiple companies that have wanted to advertise with Irish Breakdown through our podcast platform. And I said, no, we don't do that. There's certain products that I've told Believe who we're with, I don't want those products being advertised on our shows. It's just something I don't believe in. And I don't want that associated with Irish Breakdown. There's been companies that, hey, we want that. And I've said, no, I don't. It's not that I'm against your product. I'm against the type of commercials you want to do. Those are inappropriate. If my 10-year-old niece was listening to my show, I'd be appalled if she heard that come out of my mouth or anybody else's mouth, because they wanted me to do the ad read. So, Vince, one of the companies said they relented and said, okay, you can change the read any way you want. Mm-hmm. Just talk about our product. And I said, okay, we'll do that. But we're not going to mention inappropriate things. If you ever notice, I never do gambling reads for our site. Now, I'm not someone who believes that I don't want Irish Breakdown anyway associated with this, because I know there's a lot of people that do it. The guys next to me have no problem with it. I personally have a problem with it, meaning like I won't participate in it. And I don't think it's right for me to do an ad read for a product that I personally would never do, nor would I personally want to encourage anyone to partake in it. But I know that a lot of people don't have a problem with it. So I'll have Vince or Sean do the ad read, because I don't think it's something that Irish Breakdown shouldn't be associated with. It's something that Brian Driscoll, myself, I have an issue with, and I don't think it's appropriate for us, for me to do that, because it's not a product I partake in. And so those are conversations you have to have. So I've turned down money because it's not a product that I want associated with my brand. So then that's something that these players have to make those kind of decisions on. Where, do you really want to go on this commercial for this product? Even though I don't care. Just pay me. Other kids have to make some decisions and say, do you really think it's good for your brand for you to put on this costume for this commercial? And then, have those type of conversations. I think that's great. That's great business lessons. That's great, teaching about branding and marketing and all these type of things that could be great lessons for these young men as they get older, and teaching them about the real life of the business, as opposed to, here's $2 million because you can throw a football real far. I have no problem with you wanting to give him $2 million because he can throw a football real far, but make there be something in return for it to actually be about name, image, and likeness. That's all I ask. And I think these could be great lessons for young men and young women in women's basketball and things like that. At Notre Dame, we're at a school where a women's basketball team is highly marketable. They're actually, I think, the only Notre Dame program that has been on a national brand commercial, if we remember that.
It was the whole starting lineup.
Right. So I'm all for those things, So if Hannah Hidalgo has to make that choice, like, I don't want to be associated with that brand because I don't think it's, this or that or the other thing. It's great lessons for these young people. And I focus mostly on football. I still say young men. So that's why I think those things are really important. And making it true NIL deals, I think those are great lessons for young people on top of giving them opportunities to make money. That's why I think it should be done this way.
All right, we got another super chat from, and I'm going to butcher this name. If anybody wants to help me with it, I'd appreciate it, because I know he's a constant visitor to the shows and stuff. Is it Jarzi Bear? Does that sound right?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, sorry, man, if I butchered it. I apologize. Names are important to me, and if I mess it up, I'm sorry.
Look at Vince assuming it's a man. What is wrong with you, Vince?
There you go. See? See what happens? Gosh. Man, killing me. But thank you for the super chat, Bear. Appreciate it very much. Says, I'm a Notre Dame fan from Southern Idaho. I just bought my tickets for the Boise State game, and they're calling it the biggest road game in Idaho sports history. Will you guys be there? Because I'd love to meet you.
I'll be there. Vince, I don't know what
maybe
your schedules are a little bit.
We'll kind of see. There's an away game for my kid, but we'll see if that even occurs.
But I'll be there. I'm thinking about some different things. Trev, I don't know if you'll be down for that. We can always talk about it, but it'll partly depend on Vince. But I'll be there. Thinking about doing some things where before the game, because I thought that was pretty fun, Trev. Before, and Vince, you were both there before the spring game. We didn't do like a tailgate, but we said, hey, we're meeting up here.
Oh, there will meet and greet. Yeah.
Be there for 30, 45 minutes. Anybody wants to come by around this time. It'll be fun. So I may do some more of that stuff next year, just because I get a lot of people that are like, hey, I'd love to meet you. And I'm like, well, we're not doing a tailgate that day. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But if we do anything, we'll announce it on the show.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
I really appreciate the opportunity. So let's see here. We got the super chats done, so we can jump back up at the top and get.
Here we go. John A1, our buddy, one of the originals. Which Notre Dame group is more talented? 5 starting offensive linemen versus 5 non-QB starting skill players. Which group will impress more in 2025?
Trev, you got a thought on this?
God, I mean, it's so hard to compare talent relative to their positions.
Right.
Like Charles Jagusah's ceiling is so high, but Jaden Greathouse also has a really high ceiling. How do you compare the effect? I mean, from a numbers wise, I think you almost have to default go by the non-starting skill players, non-quarterback starting skill players, because you can see it. I mean, there are numbers that you can pull up for offensive linemen, but that stuff you have to go and pull up from Pro Football Focus. So my gut wants to say the 5 non-quarterback starting skill players, but more talented overall. That's tough. That's a really tough one. My gut initially wants to say the skilled players, but the more and more I'm thinking about it, to play well as a cohesive unit and with how much Notre Dame needs them to perform, I also want to say the O-line, like the 5 guys together. That's tough. That's up in the air for me. What say you guys?
I will go with the skill players in this one, but it's not by a lot. And the reason why is, so I look at it like this. I like, how do you grade out as from a dominant standpoint at your position? So Trev, you talking about like Charles Jagasaw. So if I'm comparing it and I were to say talent, so let's just come to this, let's decide this. How are we going to rank the 5 offensive linemen from a pure talent standpoint? So, which is actually difficult because I think there's a lot of similarities, but let's just say Jagasaw's number 1. Let's just say Shrouth is 2. Let's say Wagner's 3, Knapp is 4, and just to make Vince mad, Craig is 5. And I'm not saying I'm ranking in that. That's kind of off the top of my head. Just like let's just do it that. So then it's like, okay, well, just dominance your position. How does that number 1 guy stack up to the number 1, the skill player? So it's like Jagasaw versus Jeremiah Love. Number 1, I'm saying like right now, just talking talent, it's kind of a wash. I think Jeremiah Love can be the best running back in the country, and I think Charles Jagasaw could be the best guard in the country. Not saying he is. I'm saying he has the talent to be so. So you go number 2. Who did we say number 2 was? Did we say Shrouth?
Yeah.
So then it's Shrouth versus like Malachi Fields. And then it's Wagner versus Eli Raridan or Jaden Greathouse, whoever you want to pick. Then it's Knapp versus the other of that guy, whoever you don't pick number 4, whether it's Price or, Raridan or Greathouse. And then 5, you got Craig versus pick a guy. Is it Jadar?
Leonard Moore? Have you gone there yet?
So it's O-line, but
it doesn't say offense.
He says, which Notre Dame group is more talented? 5 starting O-line or 5 non-starting skill players? My assumption is he's referring to trying to look at on offense. He doesn't say it, but because he says non-QB starting skill players, I'm taking that as offense. That's how you get 5.
Because if it's the whole team, it's the skill players.
Yeah, because you're talking about one position versus the entire team, and John usually asks smarter questions.
Okay.
So I would assume, but I could be wrong. And
no, he said it's all. He said it's offense.
Okay.
He just said that.
So I read it correctly. But you are correct. If you're taking one, you take your 1 best position group and then stack it up their 5 versus the best 5 of the entire team. That's
right.
So then you get down to like 4 and 5, and it's like, okay, it's Jeremiah Love, and it's Malachi Fields, and it's, let's say, Jaden Greathouse, and then Eli Raridan, and then what's after that? It's Jadarian Price or Jordan Faison or Will Pauling, or it's just, I just think that side is actually, in my opinion, just a little bit more talented, just God-given ability, potential to dominate their position than the offensive line. And that's more of a compliment to the skill talent that I think Notre Dame has than it is any kind of attempt to knock the offensive line, because I think the offensive line is very talented and has a chance to be one of, if not the best offensive line in college football this year. It's just, that's how good I think the Notre Dame offensive skill talent is. And I think what this question does, John, is it allows you to get a little bit of insight into kind of my head. If you want to understand why I'm so excited about this season, it's because I think that skill talent on offense is a lot better than I think a lot of people think. And that's what gives me a lot of excitement, because we know the offensive line is talented. And you don't have the success they had last year with all their flaws if you don't have talent. Anthony Knapp doesn't play the way he had. Even with all the criticisms we've offered him, could you imagine what it would look like if he didn't have talent as a 290-pound true freshman? It would have been really – it would have looked like 2021 when they were trying to make their way to Joe Alt. And they said, well, let's try this guy. Let's try that guy. And it didn't work out. So that's why I look at it and say why I think it'd be skill talent. But I'm not going to be like, Trev, you think it's O-line? You're crazy, man. Like, I think it's close, and I think it could go either way. I just personally think the skill talent. And the other part is when your top guy is a proven guy versus your top guy being an unproven guy, that factors into it for me as well. What say you, Vince?
I think I'm leaning more towards Trevor on this one, just because I have a very high opinion of the offensive line right now. I think the top end of the skill players is better, but I think the bottom end of the skill players falls beneath the bottom end of the offensive line. So that's how I justify it in my head. I think the offensive line is going to be really, really good. I'm very high on this group. And That includes Anthony Knapp. That obviously is part of that 5. And I'm very, very interested to see if this starting 5 that they've got going into fall camp is still the starting 5 coming out of fall camp, because I think there's a ton of talent there. But I'd like the offensive line at this point better than the 5 top skill guys.
Can we just get this out of the way so we don't have to keep doing prefaces all summer? Nobody in this conversation thinks Anthony Knapp lacks talent.
Right.
None of us think that he can't be a good football player. The only debate we've ever had is he your best left tackle?
Correct.
Or is he better suited for inside?
Right.
Vince, you love Ashton Craig.
Yep.
How would you feel about that if Notre Dame moved him to left tackle?
I wouldn't love him as much.
All right, there you go.
Plain and simple.
There you go.
Yeah.
All of us think Jeremiah Love's a star, right?
Yep.
How would it feel if Notre Dame moved him to tight end?
Would not love him as much.
It's an incredible exaggeration, but you get
Correct.
the point that I'm making.
Yes,
right?
100%.
It's so I don't want to do this all summer where we have to preface. Anthony, I think look. We all think Anthony Knapp's a talented player. Is left tackle his best position? Is he comfortable enough in pass pro to be as dominant there as we think he can be as an inside player? That's the only question. And if Joe Rudolph is right that he can, then this offensive line is going to be elite. And if he's not, then there's going to be some issues in pass pro at left tackle that they're going to have to address. They're going to have to figure it out. That's it. It's not that we think Anthony Knapp sucks or shouldn't play. It's always, I don't think Anthony Knapp should start at left tackle. I think he should start inside. I think somebody else should start at left tackle. That's been the only other. That's always been the conversation.
Right.
And I just don't want to have to spend all summer throwing prefaces out there. So now that we've got that out there, we don't have to keep making that preface every time we mention Anthony Knapp's name. Fair enough?
I'm there.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Rack them up. Tyler Evans, thank you for the super chat. Rank each power for conference this upcoming season. I'm guessing that was Power 4. So rank each Power 4 conference this upcoming season on excitement this year, only in conference play.
Ooh. I know who's at the bottom.
12?
And no, ACC.
Okay.
I don't, and here's why, because he's talking about excitement in conference play. And my issue with the ACC this year is I don't think the ACC did a real good job of creating matchups for its best teams. And I look at, when I think about the best teams in the ACC and I think about who plays each other, we don't have as many of those matchups that I'd like to see. And the biggest one is we don't have Clemson, Miami on the schedule. Like, that's just that to me is a little bit disappointing, and I would want to see that. We do have Louisville, Miami, which is good, but there's just not a lot of matchups in the ACC this year that have me all fired up. We don't have, we do have Clemson, SMU, so that'll be nice, and we do have SMU and Miami, so at least SMU. But like, am I really excited about SMU? Why is SMU the only team in the league that has to play Clemson, Miami, and Louisville? Why are they the ones that have to do that, not Miami or not Clemson? So I'm not a big fan of that. That's my number 4. My number 3 is probably the Big Ten. I think and there's a big gap here. The reason I say the Big Ten is because, again, we're getting some of the good matchups, but we're not like the Penn State. I'm really looking forward to the Penn State-Oregon game. But then if you look at kind of the rest of it, it's like, okay, do we all agree that and I know Trevor and I do. Trevor and I agree that the 3 best teams in the Big Ten this year are Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, right? But, Oregon has to play Penn State, but they don't have to play Ohio State. They don't have to play Michigan. Like, there's just not as many marquee matchups in there. There's, Penn State, Michigan, or Penn State, Ohio State. There's Penn State, Oregon, and then obviously you look at Michigan. Michigan has to play a challenging schedule, but Michigan doesn't have to play Penn State this year. They don't have to play Oregon this year. So, like, a lot of your brand names are not playing each other this year, except for Penn State. And so that just doesn't create a lot of excitement. Number 2 for me is probably the Big 12. And it's just because there's so much parity in that league that in the style of play that the teams play with, they just have exciting games every weekend. They're just fun to watch. Like, none of them have any impact on the national championship, but they're just fun to watch. And so I always look forward to Big 12 play. And then number one is SEC, because I do think the SEC this year, when you look at conference play, you've got some really great matchups this year. And now some of the leagues don't have as tough as, some of the teams don't have as tough of schedules as others, but there's, because of the 16-team league, but there's 16 is still better than 18. And I think it's a little easier to create some of those matchups. You look at Texas this year playing at Florida. There's always Texas, Oklahoma, Texas at Georgia, Texas against Texas A&M. You look at Georgia has to play, Alabama at home. They've got to play Florida. They got to play Texas. They got to play Ole Miss. There's just, to me, a lot of those battles. Ole Miss, LSU, like the last few years has been a very entertaining football game the last 2 years. Just like great. Last year it went to overtime. LSU literally never led until overtime when they had the game winner. The year before, it was a great shootout game where it was just a back and forth game. So they've had some great games this year. Oklahoma has a pretty entertaining schedule this year in the league. So I just think that they've done a much better job in the SEC of creating this season, maybe not as much last season, but definitely this season, just more really entertaining games that I care to watch than maybe the Big Ten has. And so that's why they're number one on my list for the season. What say you, Trev?
We have similar lists at 1 and 4. I was close between the Big 12 and the Big 10. For me, a lot of my interest in the Big 10, though, which is why I have them at 2, lies outside of the top 3 teams. There's a lot of new quarterbacks in the Big 10. Ohio State has a new quarterback. Oregon's going to have a new quarterback. And the only team that has a lot of returning production is Penn State, the team that historically has not been able to beat Michigan, Ohio State on a consistent basis. But I'm going to be paying attention to like the IUs. Was last year a Cinderella story type season? Was it really that type of year for them? Or is Kurt Cignetti really building something? I think it's more the latter, but we're not going to have to wait that long to find out. Unlike last year, they play home against Illinois in week 4 of the season. Then they're at Iowa. Then they have a bye. Then they're at Oregon. They play Michigan State at home. They also play at Penn State. So it's not a scenario where they're not playing a whole lot of challenging opponents until like November. What was that last year? Like 22nd or something, like second to last week of the regular season when they played at Ohio State. So I'm interested to see how they play. Michigan, I think, is going to be better this season compared to last. When I mean better, I don't think they're going to compete for the Big Ten title, but
they're definitely going to be more fun to watch
100%.
than they were last year. I don't
100%.
think you could get an uglier brand of football than what Michigan played for most of last season.
No, I don't either. And then we've talked about it on the show before, but I do also think that USC is going to be better than what they were last year as well. We're talking about a program that think you made some addition by subtraction. And outside of the Notre Dame game, they had a fourth quarter lead against every opponent that they played that they lost to last year up until they hosted Notre Dame. So I think that league is a little bit more open than what some might think. At the top, obviously, it's Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, but 2 of those 3 teams are battling with new quarterbacks. So I think the Big Ten edges out the Big 12 in that for me to put them at number 2. But I'm still excited to watch the Big 12 because there's like 4 or 5 teams within that conference that could live somewhere in the 10-2, 8-4 range, to be completely honest with you. So it's completely wide open. I think they're both going to be fun in their own right. But like we said, I don't think there's going to be a championship contender coming out of the Big 12. So that's kind of what separated it for me.
No, there definitely won't be a championship contender coming out of it. I think what Brian said was that Big 12 games are fun to watch, but they will have no bearing on college football.
No,
like
not on national championship.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's so accurate, but they are fun to watch.
They're
Big 12
really
games
fun to watch.
Are fun to watch, but there's no national champion contender in that mix. At least I don't see it yet. Honestly, if we were talking about excitement of games, I know you guys did you guys both say ACC was last?
Yeah, and to me, it's not even close.
See, Big Ten for me is last. It bores me. The Big Ten, I guess I get beaten over the head with the Big Ten so much that I'm just like, I would rather watch anything else.
That's why you just got to learn to ignore people like Trevor and I do.
Well, believe me, I do plenty of ignoring of people. But it's last for me. Like, I don't get excited about Big Ten football. I just don't, which is why I would be devastated if Notre Dame ever joined the Big Ten for a multitude of reasons. That would be one of them. It's boring football to me anymore. So they would be last. ACC would be third. Big 12 would be second, and the SEC would be first. Because you can't argue. Like, you can say a lot of stuff about the SEC. You can't argue with the matchups that they're going to have and some of those marquee matchups, and it's good football. You can't argue that. You can hate on the SEC. That's totally fine. I have no problem with that. But you can't argue with the football that's being played, like when some of these big time teams play against each other.
Well, I could last year. I mean, there's some ugly football played in the SEC last year, but my contention for 2025, and I said this when we did our top 25 show, Vince, is that I just think a lot of those teams are going to be better. I think Alabama's going to be a better team than they were last year.
Yeah.
So when they play, it's going to look a lot better. I think in some ways Georgia is going to be better in some areas and maybe not some others. I don't think Georgia's going to be as ugly offensively this year as they were. I think Texas is going to be really good. I think Texas A&M is going to be improved. I think LSU is going to be improved. I don't think they're going to be top 10 in the country necessarily improved. They're going to be better than the team they were last year. I think Oklahoma is going to be improved. I don't think they're top 10 in the country improved, like they're overrated, but they're going to be better than the just mediocre to below average team they were a year ago. So that's why this year I expect to be different, because last year, Vince, I bang on the SEC for being overrated last year all the time. And I'll stand by that till the day that I die. But it's kind of like, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be true every year. It was just true last year. I don't know that it's going to be true this year. I think the SEC is going to be pretty good this year. And that's my annoyance is when we just assume the SEC is the best league every year. That's annoying because it's not. Last year, Big Ten was definitely a better league than the ACC last year. And not just because the champ came from the Big Ten. That's also a lazy way of looking at it.
Agreed.
It's just top to bottom. It was a better league. And it was better football last year. I don't know that that's going to be true this year. I think it's going to be very different this year because I think, to your point, Vince, the brand in the Big Ten is still pretty ugly for the most part. The SEC was ugly last year. I don't think it's going to be ugly this year.
Right. I don't think that's a common. I don't think that's going to be a common.
It was an
theme,
anomaly.
Though. Yeah,
it was
right.
A down year. There weren't a lot of good
Right.
quarterbacks in the SEC, which we said before the season. There was a lot of quarterbacks that were very young. Now you've got a very talented group of quarterbacks. Lenore Sellers goes into year 2. You've got DJ Lagway goes into year 2. It's the Arch Manning era. There's just, we're going to get a better I don't know that we're going to get a more talented quarterback at Alabama. I don't think that we will get a more talented quarterback at Alabama, but we're going to get better quarterback play at Alabama than what we saw in 2024 because it's going to be a better system fit for what – I mean, Jalen Milroe in 2023 was fun to watch. Jalen Milroe in 2024 was like getting a root canal. And it's just brutal half the time. It's like, I can't watch this. I mean, because he was a terrible fit for the system. We'll have a better fit. So the quarterback play is going to be better. And that's a big reason why that I think that it's going to just be more just better football in the SEC is because it's just there was a lot of young talent in the SEC last year, which led to a lot of what we saw. Even a guy like Diego Pavia is fun to watch. And that guy's like a little tank playing quarterback. Clark Lee's unit plays hard.
For sure.
He's not so talented.
Right.
And so like Tennessee played in a really ugly brand of football last year. I don't know that it's going to be that ugly this year. So I just think it's going to be better this year, in my opinion. Just Oklahoma, John Mateer at quarterback is going to look a lot better than what they looked last year. So just overall, I think the brand is going to be better this year. It was just very average last year as far as just how it aesthetically average. There was good teams in the league, but it just was like, this is just not good football. Mm-hmm. This year, I expect it to be a lot better football. But I expect the Big Ten to kind of be what it was last year, but a little bit worse in some areas, top to bottom. But to your point, Trev, you could see if Nebraska has the breakout people are hoping for, if Michigan State does what I think it maybe could do in year 2 of Jonathan Smith, which is like show growth and be maybe a 7-win team, that kind of thing. They're going to need those teams. USC's got to get back to being USC. Because say whatever you want about USC in 2022, they weren't a great team, but they were fun to watch. Hey, last year was just like, dude, they can't play defense and they can't score. Like, this is just not even fun to watch. So I think that'll look a little bit different. There's just not a lot of really good football in the Big Ten, in my opinion. Like, as far as like aesthetically exciting games, and that's what the question is. It's about excitement. It's not about who has the better teams. It's who's going to play better football, who's going to play football that I want to watch, that I'm looking forward to watching. And I think the Big Ten scheduling combined with some teams that are just like Minnesota's just an ugly football team to watch. Wisconsin's just an ugly football team to watch. There's just a lot of that in that league. Even Illinois is a really good football team. I don't like sit back like, boy, I can't wait to watch this Illinois game, man. This is a fun team to watch. They're tough. They're hard-nosed. They're well-coached. It's just kind of an ugly brand of football. That works, though. So, I mean, so if we're talking about quality team, I have Indiana in the top 10. I have Illinois just outside the top 10. They're good football teams, but it's just not like I don't get as excited about Indiana and Illinois as I do about watching Ole Miss and LSU. I have Indiana and Illinois both ranked higher than Ole Miss and LSU.
Yeah.
But which game would you rather watch? That's where I'm coming from. So I think there's a lot of good points there, guys. Let's get to the next one. We had one more super chat from Tyler. Did I miss this one? Okay, yep, got that one. And then here's one more from Tyler.
All right, Tyler, thanks again for another super chat. Give me one upset you believe will happen this year.
Trevor, you got one off the top of your head?
I have two off the top of my head.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so Archer, I see you in the chat. Please don't be upset. And this is just for fun. I have Ohio State losing to Washington. It's their first road game, and Washington went undefeated at home last year. It's September 27th. And so it's new starting quarterback on the road. I don't think Ohio State's the less talented team. They weren't the less talented team when they hosted Michigan in the final game of the regular season. Little bit different implications going on with that game, but that's one that I'm keeping my eye on for upset alert. And then the other one, it's not even mine, but I just keep thinking about it. Detroit Hunter said that Syracuse is going to walk into Neyland Stadium in week 1 and beat Tennessee. And that's another one that I have.
That would really shock me.
It's another
but
one.
Like he called a lot of those last year. Remember, he called he kept talking about Georgia Tech beating Florida State. And I was like, come on, bro. I like Florida State, but they're not beating. And then remember all offseason, he's like, I think Florida State's going to start off 0-2. And I was like, you think they're going to lose to Georgia Tech and Boston College? Like, come on, man. Like, what's up with this Florida State hate? And that's exactly what happened. So that part of me wants to just kind of be like, I don't know, man. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But yeah, I kind of get that one. Vince, do you have any?
I think I guess this is more of like a bold take maybe, or a hot take, or whatever you want to call it. But I think the best team in LA is going to be UCLA.
Oh, wow.
And I think they're going to beat USC last game.
Wow. Wow, that is a very bold take.
Yep, that's where I'm at.
Tell me why. Is it just that you like UCLA more this year, or is it because you just don't like
first of all, I do like UCLA more this year, number one. Not an incredible amount, but I also am not a believer in what USC is. And I think it's going to be very similar to what happened 2 years ago when USC came to Notre Dame Stadium undefeated. Notre Dame beat the crap out of them, and then they just fell apart the rest of the way. I could see that happening again. I don't think USC is going to be a very mentally tough team. And once they get it handed to them in October against Notre Dame, they're going to fall apart. And I think UCLA is going to take advantage of that. And I think they beat them in their rivalry game.
That's a very interesting one. So I've got one. I think this is an upset because I don't overrate Oklahoma like a lot of people do. But I think Oklahoma beats LSU at the end of the year. And I think LSU is going to possibly be a top 10 team when that happens. It's in Norman, and it's potentially a save the head coach's job. And I do think Brett Bielema's players they seem to like him and respect him. So I think it could be one of those save the coach's job types of games. And so I have LSU getting upset by Oklahoma. That's one. And then I got another one. This is the year, fellas. Mark it down. Mark my words. This is the year the Yellow Jackets finally get it done and beat Georgia.
Ooh.
They keep playing. They've played them tough now for like 3 straight years. And this is the year they get them at home. This is the year they get it done. And I think it's at home. Or are they doing that stupid playing in Atlanta thing this year? Let me look at the schedule real quick because that's really stupid. Yeah, they're playing in Mercedes-Benz, whatever. It's stupid. But I think the Yellow Jackets get it done. I think this is the year that they upset Georgia.
Okay.
Those are the ones off the top of my head.
I like those.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are fun.
I gave you 2, Tyler. Since you gave us 2 super chats, I'll give you two upsets. Appreciate that.
I mean, I gave you a whole season's worth, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think we all did great.
USC's not going to be good.
I know Roger's mad at me, Roger Dodger, and you should be. You should be mad at me because that's your team, and I'm okay with that.
Just so you know, Roger, I think Vince is nuts because I do not think USC is going to be worse than UCLA this year. I think UCLA is not going to be very good, and mainly because I'm not a very big fan of Nico. So I don't think he's a very good quarterback. And I just think that whole thing where they chased the one kid out to bring in the other kid and his brother who screwed the program over, and I just don't think that's going to go well. But, yeah. See, now Roger coming in with some heat, though, Vince. He's mad. NIU
right.
upset can't be topped. ND wins.
I mean, the NIU, yeah, you're right.
No,
absolutely. But you know what? Notre Dame went to the national championship
I took
game,
that.
So
he didn't say that. I took
good.
that out of context just to have some fun with it. That's not what he was saying.
It's all good.
But, yeah, let's get up here to my guy, Aiden Banami.
All right, Aiden, here we go. Heard on Pate a Knowles fan say media doesn't have access. Thoughts? It's absolutely crazy in my opinion. Here we are having Coach Freeman give all Irish media a nice solid Q&A. Lucky to be an ND fan. I don't know if I'd go that far. But
I'm going to keep my comments to myself because I'm a little annoyed today about that. But
okay, and I don't want to get in trouble for saying something I shouldn't say.
Yeah,
so
I'll just say this. Notre Dame gives better access than some programs. They don't give the access they should. And just because Florida State does it completely wrong doesn't mean that it's that way. And I'm not someone who believes the media has a entitled right to things. I think fans have an entitled right to have more access to the team that they cheer for, spend millions of dollars to support, hundreds of millions of dollars to support. And so I'm just not a big fan of that action. So I'm going to say that I don't. I'm glad. Always feel blessed to be a Notre Dame fan, just from a football standpoint. But in that standpoint, I don't think that it's necessarily something to be like, oh, Notre Dame just does it so right. They do a lot of things right, and there's things that they do that I don't think are necessarily the way that is right when you look at, are they really doing right by fans? So I mean, look, if you just look at, if Notre Dame sells out, so they have 77,622 seats. If they just make $100 a seat, which you and I both know they're making more than that when you look at like the really expensive seats, that's $7.76 million a game. And they play 7 home games. So that gives them $54 million plus on revenue from, like, now again, that's gross revenue. That doesn't include they got to pay people to be there and lights and all that kind of stuff, paying security. But I promise you, they're not spending anywhere close to that amount. And that's just on parking. Correct. I mean, on tickets. If we assume the average ticket's only $100, which you and I both know they're making more than $100 off those things. Then there's concessions and all, and the parking and all that kind of stuff. So those are fans spending that money to support the team. All the people that have signed up for Peacock to be able to watch this team play, Central Michigan and Louisville and teams like that. I just feel like they deserve more. And it doesn't even have to be access to where we're always the ones. Like, they should be putting out clips from every practice that they have. There's ways to do that where you're not giving anything away that fans like. It's funny what some fans will look at and be like, oh, that was amazing. I'm like, dude, I got nothing out of that. Like, there was nothing, but that's what they like. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just think that there's things that the fans should get more access. And we are a conduit to that at times, but Notre Dame can just directly go to the fans more, in my opinion. And the thing is, the stuff that they do is first class. The stuff that Fighting Irish Media puts out is top notch. It's just, y'all should do more, in my opinion, because I think the fans deserve more. Because again, if there were no fans, if fans of college football at Division I level were like fans at Division III level, then there are no NIL deals anybody cares about. There are no $1 million deals. There are no, $1 billion, TV deals and things like that. Those things aren't a thing. And it at the end of the day, it is the fans that drive that. And I heard Ryan Clark make a really ridiculous comment recently about who cares what fans think. And I'm like, this is the entitlement that is such a problem with certain athletes and people in the media. There's a sense of entitlement. So say, I don't think, well, they should let us be at everything because we deserve and we're the – no, if you don't want to let us come to more practices, that's fine. But you should put out more from those practices. Do different things, interview players, do these type of things. Do all that to give more access. And it doesn't always have to be meaningful access. Like here's a deep conversation of Mike Denbrock and what he – just do fun stuff, like with Cam Williams having the fun stuff behind. Do more of that stuff. Give more access to the fans. I do think they deserve more than that. And for Florida State to completely shut people out after you went 2-10, I don't know that that's the way that I'd go about it, to be completely honest with you.
And I also, somebody put in the chat something about BK offers more media access than Freeman does at LSU or whatever it is. A head coach does have say in it, but it's not just the head coach.
True, but if Marcus Freeman wanted there to be more access to his team, there'd be more access.
Yeah, I just don't think it's high on his priority list, and so he lets other people make the decision.
I just think he wants his team, and this is a natural aspect of a coach.
Right.
I think he wants his team to be, it's about us, and and I get that. So yeah, he's not keen to give us a ton of access, But as you said, that's why other people need to say, okay, look, coach, I understand that, but there's other things to think about other than just Marcus Freeman's job needs to build his team. That's why I say it doesn't have to be about us getting more access. I do think us getting more access is good for the fans too, because we can give reports and things like that. But I don't know how much of that I'd want out there if I was a football coach. I would say, hey, listen, you guys can come to this practice, but you can't report on it.
Exactly.
I say, okay, cool. But you and I both know that
somebody's going to screw it up.
Would screw that up, and that's why we don't get to do things.
100%.
But that's what says you control that. You put more of this stuff out. You do that. And now that coming from a business owner that covers a team is terrible for Driscoll Publishing and Irish Breakdown, because the more of the content they put out on their own, the less of the people that are looking at our stuff. But it's about what's best for the fans, though.
Right.
It's not about what's best for Irish Breakdown or Irish Illustrated or South Bend Tribune. It's what's best for the fans. And what's best for the fans is more access to the team in different ways. That's what I believe. And if it's them doing some of it, us doing some of it, I just think that's I just wish there was more. But I think I absolutely think Marcus Freeman's responsible for us not getting as much access.
Okay.
I just understand it. I'm not mad about it because I get it from his perspective. There needs to be other people that have some say to say, hey, here's why we understand what you're doing, but here's why we're going to provide a little bit more access. Or here's why let's ramp up Fighting Irish Media. That's more internship opportunities, more opportunities for students to kind of get work where we're going to do more with the Fighting Irish Media. Because here's another thing, you guys can make money off of this if you do it right. And I just think that's why. And that at the end of the day, it's good for the students. It's good for different people that are involved in that, and it's good for the fans. And at the end of the day, that's ultimately why we do this. Yeah, I want to make money and support my family, and I want you guys, and you guys want me to make money so that I can then pay you guys, and you can support your families. Of course, it's a business, but at the end of the day, we do this to provide a service for fans, and that's ultimately why I do think they deserve more. It just doesn't always have to come from us. But yeah, Florida State's not doing it right, like at all. That's the thing, dude. The FIM, they're really good. That's why it's almost like I wish you guys would do more, because when you do put stuff out, it's top notch. It really is. It's really good stuff. I want to get the question from somebody we haven't brought up yet.
Muhammad Abdi. Brian, do you think this is the best recruiting stretch Notre Dame has had in the last 25 years? 23 and on.
So that would basically go back to around 2000.
Yeah. So it's like the last 4 recruiting classes.
It's close. Y'all, we got to remember what Charlie brought in from 06, 07, and 08. I mean, for 06, 07, 08, 06, Charlie Weiss landed like the number 2 player in the country in Sam Young. He landed a lot of really talented players. 07, he lands Jimmy Clausen, a 5-star. I mean, the best player in high school football, number 1 overall player. The guy that people now say that Notre Dame can't land. And he landed Duval Kamara, who was a big-time player. I mean, that 07 running back class, it ended up not panning out. But at the time, I mean, we're looking at that class being like, oh my gosh, that running back haul is ridiculous. You know, I mean, the 06 class, his first full class had some spots that weren't as strong, but you know, they brought in the late Conrad Ruland, who was a highly ranked recruit, and Richard Jackson was a 4-star recruit. James Aldridge was a 5-star running back. They ended up not panning out, but Demetrius Jones and Zach Frazier were both like top 250 quarterbacks in that class. Demetrius Jones was, according to Rivals, the number 54 player in the country. Zach Frazier was number 105. They basically landed 2 top 100 quarterbacks in that class. Eric Olson was ranked really high. Chris Stewart was a 4-star. Matt Carriefel was a highly ranked player. Sam Young was a 5-star, number 2 player in the country. Darren Walls. Remember how big it was when Notre Dame landed Darren Walls as a recruit, Vince? This might be a little bit before your time, Trev, but Darren Walls was a top 50 player coming out of PA, and he signs with Notre That that cornerback class with him and Rayshawn McNeil that year was big time. Now, again, as typical Charlie, the D-line class wasn't all that great, and the linebacker class wasn't all that great. And then you got in 2007, you get Jimmy Clausen, you get Armando Allen, you get Robert Hughes, you get Duval Kamara, who's a big-time player. Deion Walker was considered a big-time. Oh, Deion was 2008. You've got in that class, you got Taylor Devers, a really good player. Matt Romine was a big-time player out of Oklahoma. You got Ian Williams, which is a huge pull out of Florida. Kerry Neal was a very highly ranked player. Gary Gray was a top 100 recruit at corner. You got Golden Tate, Harrison Smith. And then 2008 was probably the best class still that Notre Dame signed in a very, very long time. You had Michael Floyd and Deion Walker, receiver. Kyle Rudolph and Joseph Fourier, both NFL players at tight end. Jonas Gray at running back. 5-star Dane Chris at quarterback. You had Lane Cleveland was a highly ranked player. Trevor Robinson was a big-time commit out of Nebraska, top 100 player. Rivals had him as the number 37 player in the country, a guard. Braxton Cave was a 4-star recruit. At linebacker, Anthony McDonald was a big-time recruit. Darius Fleming was a big-time recruit. Steve Filer was a big-time recruit. Sean Swinar was a big-time recruit. Those were all Chicago kids. Anthony McDonald was a top 250 player. Darius Fleming ranked 89th in the country. Steve Filer that year ranked 143rd. Sean Swinar ranked number 159. You had Ethan Johnson was a big-time borderline 5-star recruit. Cap was a big 4-star recruit. Robert Blanton was highly ranked. Jamore Slaughter was highly ranked. Dan McCarthy was highly ranked and all talented. So that was just looking at from a recruiting standpoint, because we can't compare the results of what those guys did in college to what this group recruiting, because we don't know what most of these guys are going to do in college. That 06 to 08 recruiting by Charlie Weiss was elite. He just couldn't coach and develop a roster the way you needed to. But a lot of success Brian Kelly had in 2012 was because of guys that Charlie Weiss landed in 08 and 09. Like all those fifth-year seniors like Cap and all those guys, those were 08 Charlie Weiss recruits. And in the 09 class, which we didn't even talk about, had Manti, Zach Martin, Tyler Eifert. I mean, that class was pretty loaded too. You had multiple Hall of Famers in that group. So it's in the ballpark. I just need to see how this class finishes first. The 25 class was really good. It wasn't quite as good as 24, in my opinion. And 23 was very underrated as well. If this 27 class or 26 class finishes the way that I think they can finish, then we can have a conversation about it. But that 06 to 08 classes were really good. I mean, we're excited about Notre Dame getting 1 5-star in CJ Carr. Charlie got 2 in a row. And in his first, he got a top 50 quarterback and a top 100 quarterback in his first class. He got a 5-star number 1 overall player in the country in his next class at quarterback. And then the next year got another 5-star quarterback in the next class. I don't think we see it as good as it was at the time, because we look back and like, well, Dane wasn't really a 5-star. Demetrius Jones sucked, and Zach Frazier. That's fine. But we don't know that also might be true for the guys they're recruiting now. If you just look at it from a recruiting standpoint and what kind of coups those were and how big it was at the time, I mean, those were massive, massive gets. And that's why I say Notre Dame there were more holes back then than in now. And I think this is the most balanced recruiting we've seen. No question. That's an easy answer. Most balanced. Just meeting needs everywhere. But as far as like just elite level recruiting at the top, that 06 to 08 hauls were really good. Really good. So I just need to see how this class finishes. If this class finishes the way I think, then maybe we're having a different conversation about that. You got it. You got any thoughts on that, Vince, or do you think I kind of nailed that one?
I think you covered it since you went through the entire list of guys that got recruited. I mean, you were in your wheelhouse.
Recruiting back then, though, I mean, it just was like there was so much buzz about the recruiting.
Listen, I remember it was one of my first couple of years teaching and sitting in my classroom and like having it wasn't on the radio, but it was like, this is the internet, and the internet was internet back then, right? And I was like waiting to find out if Manti Te'o, what he was going to do. Like I was in, man, like I was hooked. I was in on recruiting way back then. It's just different now. You and I had this discussion the other day just about what recruiting is now versus what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's just different because guys have so much more mobility options now than they ever have before. The money is being flown around differently than it was before. I'm not saying there wasn't money under the table. I'm not naive, okay? I watch Blue Chips, okay? But I'm saying it's different now just because of potential player mobility. If a guy's not getting what he wants after year one, boop, he's in the portal. It's gone. So, and it totally affects the recruiting class that you had going in. Like, recruiting classes are completely different now than they were back then. That's all I'm saying.
I get what you're saying, but that doesn't affect, in my opinion, the effectiveness of the recruiting efforts you have.
Yeah, right. I get that.
Your retention. That's the same argument as like, I know this group didn't pan out the way we hoped it would pan out because of development, maybe some bad evaluations. But like at the time, nobody thought, like my only issue with Demetrius Jackson was I think he's a very talented player, but my issue was more, does he really fit what Charlie wants to do?
Right.
Like Zach Frazier fit what Charlie wanted to do more than what Demetrius Jones did. That was kind of the question, but you got Jimmy pretty early, so it's going to be kind of hard to get. Okay, I'm going to come to Notre Dame, and I got Jimmy Clausen breathing down my throat. Hard pass.
Right.
I just think there was so much buzz because remember at the time they put that 06 class together during the 05 season. They put the 07 class together during the 06 season. There's a lot of buzz about Notre Dame on the field at that time too.
Absolutely.
But I would say right now I still think 06 to 08 takes the cake, even with some of the deficiencies at like linebacker and D-line because the high-level talent was just so good. And quarterback recruiting was so good. But I think if this class can finish the way that it has, and then you got 23, 24, 25, and 26 stacked together, that's where I think this class can take the cake. Because I didn't even get into the like I said, the 2009 class, guys, I didn't even really break that one down the way that I did the other classes. But, that class had Shaq Evans, who ended up transferring to UCLA and was a drafted player. You had Tyler Eifert at tight end. You had Sear Wood, Theo Riddick, Chris Watt, Zach Martin, Carlo Calabrese, Dan Fox, both starters on the 2012 team. Zeke Mata was in that class. Manti Te'o was in that class. You had E.J. Banks was a pretty decent athlete in that class. You had Nick Tausch and Ben Turk, who were obviously, kickers for you. Like, even that class was like, that's a pretty good flipping class. So that's the one thing. Say whatever you want about Charlie, but Charlie could recruit his butt off. I don't think their strategies were always good. They would have misses at certain positions, and there were some things you could critique. But when Charlie set his sights to we're going to have a good class at this position, they were going to have a good class at that position.
Yeah.
And even after some bad years, but the 26 class is the key to Notre Dame's current stretch overtaking that, in my opinion. But because again, I'm able to separate what the excitement and buzz was about the recruiting classes from what the results were, and that's kind of the way I look at it, the way that I do.
We got a super chat from Beefeater. Thank you so much for the super chat. I think it would be awesome if the Heisman gave an offensive and a defensive trophy. I want to see defensive players get more recognition or some two-way players get both trophies. What say you?
I would never want a guy to get the same trophy on both sides of the ball because the odds of a guy being the best player in the country on both sides of the ball is
slim to none.
Very slim.
Yeah.
You can make a case last year that Travis Hunter was neither the best cornerback nor the best receiver in college football.
Agreed.
Be accurate on that.
Yeah.
But what made him special was he was so good at both.
Correct.
So I have no problem with him winning that award. I honestly don't think that you should I don't have a desire to give a second Heisman out to a defensive player. I would just say if you want to do something like that, just turn Heisman into an offensive award and then start doing what they're trying to do, which is turn the Nagurski into as big of a deal for defense. And like when Xavier Watts won it, it's like it's the best defensive player or something like that. That's what I would do is just hype up another award. But the Heisman Trophy's always been a go to anybody. It's primarily been an offensive award.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say again, instead of doing that, just just hold voters to a higher standard and change your criteria to where you're actually getting the best player, not what we have now, which is pretty much just the best quarterback, maybe a receiver or a running back for one of the best teams in the country. And there's very few exceptions for that. Travis Hunter was one because he was such a unicorn with what he did. And then if he didn't win it, it would have been Ashton Genty. And they were both outside the norm, but normally we know what it normally is. So just change your criteria and hold voters to a higher standard. When people do silly things and with their votes, be willing to take those votes away. Just find more people that know football that are part of this voting process and have more clear, defined terms of what you're looking for. I'd say just fix it. Don't just too often when something's broken, we say, well, let's just do something different. No, fix it. It's a great award. It used to mean so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I used to always watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony.
Yep.
But then it's just it got to a while where you're just like, okay. When I started to get 15, 16, and guys like Gino Torretta winning it over Marshall Faulk and Garrison Hurst, that's when I was like, okay, what's going on here? So, there's been a few exceptions. I thought it was really exciting when Charles Woodson won it over Peyton Manning. I actually was kind of pulling for Peyton because I just liked Peyton Manning, but I thought it was awesome that Charles Woodson won it because it was so different. And I loved Charles Woodson as a player. I shouldn't say that as a Notre Dame fan, but I'm sorry. I can still say I'm a big Notre Dame fan, but when I put on, Charles Woodson film, that's a freak. That guy's really good, And think about the finalists that year. It was Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, and Randy Moss. That's a group.
You really can't go wrong with any of those.
You're in a win-win-win on that one.
And I realized Randy Moss was, because he played at Marshall and he probably wasn't as known, but I mean, goodness gracious.
And I think that was their first year as division. I think that was their first year playing D1 football. Because his first year at Marshall,
true. They were FCS
in '96. They were FCS, and they were a dominant FCS
yes,
team.
They were.
That was their first year, I believe, playing big time football. But that year, Randy Moss caught 90 passes for 1,647 yards and 25 touchdowns. He also returned 266 yards worth of punts and 263 yards worth of kicks. He was an absolute freak show. But, you look at their schedule. They played West Virginia, Army, Kent State, Western Illinois, Ball State, Akron, Miami of Ohio, Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, Bowling Green, Ohio, Toledo, and then Ole Miss in the bowl game. I get it. I get why you're not going to give a guy that dominated against that schedule this. But I would argue that if you'd have put him at Tennessee catching passes from Peyton Manning, his numbers would have been even better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And he would have been, escalated to a much higher.
Probably putting him at Tennessee might not have made sense, but let's just say he would have been playing in Steve Spurrier's offense in 1997.
Right.
And Danny Warfel, was he their quarterback in 1997? Let me go see here real quick, because I know he was their quarterback in 1996. Was it him? Let me go look here. 1997 Florida Gators stats. Who was their quarterback? It was Doug Johnson. Okay, he wasn't that great. But even if you gave them Randy Moss in that offense,
you give any quarterback Randy Moss,
a monster. Florida State was pretty good back then. They had a decent quarterback, I believe, that year. It was before Chris Winkie, but I'm trying to remember who Florida State's quarterback was that year. Give me a second. It was Thad Busby. Thad Busby that year was pretty decent quarterback, for 3,300 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 10 picks. He had Lavernius Coles was his top receiver. E.G. Green, Peter Warwick. Imagine if they also had Randy Moss on that team, the numbers he would have put up. So, but it went to the right guy. I mean, Charles Woodson that's what it's supposed to be. It's the best player in college football. There was nobody in 1997 that was dominating the way Charles Woodson was dominating. And for a team that was number one in the country. So, I just wish there were more years. And Ndamukong Suh probably should have won the Heisman Trophy. Well, what was the year he had? What was it, 2007? Was that the year that Ndamukong was the runner-up? I'm trying to remember what year it was. No, it wasn't. It was before that. Hold on a second. It was, let's see here, 03. When was it? When was he? You guys remember what year I'm talking about? When was Ndamukong Suh? He ranked pretty high in that one. No, it was later than that. But anyways, it was when you guys know what year I'm talking about, right? What year was he at Nebraska? He had that monster year in Nebraska. It was 2009. Okay.
Yep.
2009 Heisman Trophy. I think that went to Mark Ingram.
Yep.
And I'm sorry. Mark Ingram had a nice year for Alabama. They were the best team in the country. Toby Gerhart was number 2. Colt McCoy was number 3. With all due respect, none of those guys could hold a candle to how dominant of a football player Ndamukong Suh was that year. As a D tackle, had 85 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, and 12 sacks for Nebraska. A Nebraska team that went 10-4. There was nobody better in college football that year than Ndamukong Suh. But it went to Mark Ingram because he was the starting running back on the number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide. And I loved Colt McCoy in college, but I'm sorry. If you ask me who would you rather have on your team, Mark Ingram or Toby Gerhart, who's a heck of a player as well, or Colt McCoy or Ndamukong Suh, that's not even a question. I'm getting Ndamukong Suh out before you even finish saying his name. I'm like, oh, he's an option? Give me him. So I just say make it better. Just hold voters to more accountable. Be more clear with your directives. And if people don't live up to those directives, then be willing to say you've lost your voting privilege. It should be a privilege to be a Heisman Trophy voter. And you should take that very seriously, not making political points or not making, SEC points or I'm from the South. It's like they say, well, this guy's from here. He's going to eat up the Southern vote. Why should that matter? Why should where I'm from matter to me doing my due diligence on who I should be voting for? It's like I cover Notre Dame. If I had a Heisman Trophy vote and I'm going to say, like, look, I know this Notre Dame player was great, but I'm sorry, this guy was better. And that's what you should do. And if people aren't willing to do that, like, dude, you vote for you vote for an Ohio State guy every year. I'm sorry, like that. You vote for Notre Dame guy, Driscoll. We're pulling your Heisman vote because you vote for Notre Dame guy every year. I'm sorry, you should not have had Ian Book number 1 over Devontae Smith and Mac Jones. You're clearly biased. You're getting your vote revoked. Okay, so I'd just say do more of that, but I wouldn't change the award. That's my 2 cents. Any of you guys have what do you guys think about this?
My answer was going to be just change the criteria. I mean, if it's truly an award for the best player in college football, then award the best player in college football. If not, just make it a quarterback or offensive award.
Yeah. Somebody asked real quick, speaking of Randy Moss, somebody said, didn't Lou want Randy Moss pretty bad, but the administration wouldn't allow it? Not only did Lou Holtz want Randy Moss, but Randy Moss has committed to Notre Dame. Yeah. And Randy Moss signed with Notre Dame.
Yes, but then he got in trouble.
Yeah. That the administration then revoked his admittance, and that's when he went to Florida State. Got in trouble at Florida State as well, and that's when he ended up at Marshall. Yeah, he not only wanted him, he got him.
Oh, he got him. Yeah, he was signed, sealed, delivered.
Yeah, he was signed and sealed. He just ended up not being delivered.
He didn't get delivered. Yeah.
Yes. But man, could you imagine Derek Mays and Randy Moss on the same football team? Nope, Derek Mays and Randy Moss, that would have been. Oh, don't even. They had another player that signed in that class, ended up not making it. James Jackson, who was a running back that ended up going to Miami, also had some academic issues that they wouldn't let him in, even though after he'd signed, had a couple thousand-yard seasons as well. But yeah, that was back when Lou was like, yeah, they just weren't going to let him. They weren't going to let him win.
Nope.
So good question, Beefeater. I appreciate it. Let's get back up to the top. Got another one from John A1.
Is there an incoming freshman that will force the staff to play him even though his position is stacked, like Hamilton did in 19 or Jeremiah Smith did at Ohio State?
Yeah, right now I would say the chips are probably on Jadon Blair, sticking along the safety theme here. But that's right now. I mean, things could change with Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden on campus right now. But similar to the conversation that we had yesterday, there's just a lot in front of these other really talented freshmen coming in. James Flanagan would probably be my vote on offense. In other seasons, Will Black would probably force his way onto the field, but you have a left tackle right now in Anthony Knapp that started 15 games as a true freshman. It's going to take a lot to pull him off the field.
And he may not even be the first tackle option if Anthony Knapp goes down or whatever, because you've also got Gerby Lambert to think about.
And he's going to be back in fall camp, right? Or like somewhere in fall camp?
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Yeah.
Well, and then you also have to factor in, I mean, what if the staff elects to kick Charles Jagasaw back out to tackle if that happens? So there's a lot of obstacles in front of Will Black for him to force his way. But my money right now, because I am a betting man, would probably be on Jadon Blair, because there's a lot in front of the other candidates that could, and Jadon Blair is in the mix to potentially start. I would say he's probably near the bottom of that list, but he has the potential to do it. The other ones aren't.
Getting first team reps in the spring. I mean, you remember that picture they put out where he's breaking up that pass to Eli Raridan? And who's the guy that's giving him a high five after breaking that play up? From the field, it was the Don Schuler, which means, okay, you broke up a pass to the number one tight end and the number one safety is giving you a high five on the field. That means you were taking a first team rep.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Jadon Blair's a no, especially since he said, with Kyle Hamilton didn't start in 2019. He was a rotation safety in 2019. There were times they'd put him on the field with the other two safeties, but Jalen Elliott and Eloy Gilman were their starters. So if we're going to go that route, then absolutely James Flanagan's another one that you mentioned. And then, of course, the corners working in the two deep as well. Those are the most. And then, of course, I think Madden Framo's a guy that could eventually maybe force him in the field. But I think that's going to be a little
stacked position too.
Deal.
That's a real stacked position. Flanagan would be for me, and here's why I say that. I saw Marcus Freeman's face when somebody brought up Flanagan, and he really likes Flanagan. Like, you could just tell it was just a nonverbal facial expression. Like, they really like Flanagan. Like, so that would be the one I would pick too.
Yeah.
From John again, who do you think has a higher upside between Connor Salmon and Jaylen Warren?
Jaden Warren does. Connor Salmon definitely has the higher higher floor, but I think Jaylen Warren has the higher ceiling. He catches the ball well. He's got just game-changing speed, good height, just like Connor Salmon. Connor's 6'3", Jaden Warren's like 6'2". There was a picture of him next to Marcus Freeman, and he's every bit of at least an inch and a half, if not an inch to inch and a half taller than Marcus Freeman, who's about 6'1". So, yeah, I'd go Jaden Warren with the higher upside. Connor Salmon has the higher ceiling, or the higher floor in that one, in my view.
Aiden Benami, is it true?
Hold on, we're not going to – no. That is a message board question, dude.
Oh, I didn't even read it, so I don't even know what it's about.
No, I did. I should have looked at that beforehand.
Okay, Aiden Benami. Watch some 88 highlights. Why did Tony Rice drop back like he did? Did everyone do that? Turn your back and all? Also, he had a cannon. Wow, just slinging it around.
That's what he was taught to do. I mean, you wanted depth so you could let the vertical routes develop. And the deeper you are, the thought is the longer you have to let some of those deep routes develop. And because he had the arm he had, then you could do that. But it was really part about, I don't know that Lou wanted him to necessarily turn his back on dropbacks as far as he did. That was more of just Tony's style as far as the turning your back thing. But the depth was definitely part of the offense. It was just because Notre Dame they would throw some quick game and some screens, but their pass game, they didn't throw the ball a whole lot. When they did, it was throwing the ball down the field. So that would be why they did that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't breaking down film back in the 80s. Were the reads and things a little less complicated?
Yeah, when you're having 1-2-man routes, it's going to be.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, because
they weren't all
think
1-2-man routes. But
I think to Aiden's point, like normally you're dropping back, you got your eyes on the field, you're going through reads and progressions and all of those things. Felt like there was probably less of that back.
Yeah.
Then.
Also, under center, your first 3 steps are just getting depth,
right?
And some of his drops are like literally 9-step drops.
Yes,
your first 4 or 5 steps, you're not reading anything. You're trying to get depth,
right?
And when you start to take deeper steps, you're just going to have your back turned more,
right? I wasn't insinuating you were old, by the way.
Oh, I thought you were insinuating that I was breaking down film as a 10-year-old, and
which I think is accurate. Yeah,
100%.
Okay,
that's my dad always recruited. Now I wasn't necessarily doing Notre Dame games; I was doing more NFL games. But yeah,
that was my insinuation.
My old VHS back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, man.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that landed correctly.
It landed spot on. I'm like, This guy knows me. This guy knows me, my dude. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't take it as old. I'm not that much older than you.
No,
are.
I know. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like, I don't want
No,
people
it
thinking
landed
that.
correctly.
Okay, good. All right. So, Joe Allen, do you think that all of the talk about Carr being the starter from the media is affecting Minchie in a way negatively or positively?
If Kenny Minchie's the kid that I think he is, it's going to absolutely affect him positively because he's going to be like, okay, you guys think that CJ Carr's the guy, and I'm going to be the backup.
Right.
All right.
Okay, cool.
I'll
Let's
show
go.
you.
Yeah.
Because now there's all the pressure in this instance. I don't know that all the media is talking about Carr being the starter. I'll just say I've been very clear. I think he's going to win the battle. I've also said if Kenny beats CJ out, I'm good. Because how good is he going to have to play to beat out CJ? I've said many times that it's a win-win for Notre Dame if one of those two guys is a starter, but I'm also not going to just shy away. As much as I love Kenny, and remember, I'm the guy that had him as a top 100 player coming out of high school, and I'm the guy that convinced Sports Illustrated to rank him as the top 100 player coming out of high school because I had some say in the recruiting ranks back then, and that's the only outlet that ranked him anywhere close to that. I'm actually going to pull this up just to make sure that I'm correct on that. So you're talking to a guy that's always been higher on Kenny Minchie than most people. Yeah, his highest ranking was 167 by 247. He was ranked 180 by ESPN, 184 by On3, 208 by Rivals. But yeah, I have CJ higher. If Kenny's the kind of player that's capable of beating CJ out, all that talk about CJ is nothing but fuel for him to go out there. And it's not that he's mad at CJ. It's about Kenny's been doubted a lot. And he wasn't a big-time recruit. And even the rankings he had were kind of blew up his senior year type of rankings. He was a 3-star when Notre Dame first got on him and Tommy Rees first got on him. So it's going to be motivation for him to go out there and really raise his level of play. There is no pressure on Kenny Minchie right now. As far as external pressure.
I was going to say internally.
It's all internal pressure.
Right.
And nobody thinks he's going to beat out CJ. Not many people think he's going to beat out CJ. And so, I mean, if anything, I think it's going to motivate him to go out there and play his best. What does he got to lose? No, not many people think he's going to win the job. So what does he got to lose?
Just get back there, sling it, have a good time, battle, you know.
Go play ball.
Yeah, and I expect that from him. I do. Tyler Evans with another super chat. Thank you so much. Does Ohio State beat Michigan this year? I hope so.
For the third straight year, I'm predicting Ohio State to beat Michigan.
Right? Seriously.
And I'm eventually going to be right. You know what I mean? Like we say it every year. Like, oh no, there's no way they're going to lose 2 in a row to Ohio State.
And it's really been that way too.
I've been literally said
there's no way. There's no way
Michigan beats them.
I know.
Because remember, Ohio State had beaten Michigan 14 out of the previous 15 years.
Correct.
And and it was like 10 in a row, something like that. It was crazy. And the only year that Michigan didn't lose to Ohio State is the year they just chose not to play them because they had a C-19 outbreak.
Right.
We all know what that was. But, I was like, well, there's no way they lose 2 in a row. Because I remember thinking about that in 2022, like they're going to be so upset about last year because Michigan just trash talked them the whole offseason. The whole offseason, they just ran their mouths about finally beating Ohio State. And I'm like, man, Ohio State's going to be so mad. They're going to come out fired up. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And I know now Ohio State fans, they were cheating. That's fine. They were cheating. We all know they were cheating, but they still kicked the crap out of you in the trenches in that game. And especially in the fourth quarter when they really pulled away in that game. There's no way Ohio State loses 2 years in a row. And they did. There is no way that now they're going to lose 2 years in a row. No way they're going to lose 2 years in a row. Ohio State's going to be mad. They're going to be pissed off. They're going to come out, and they were embarrassed last year. They got C.J. Stroud, who's an absolute stud. There's no way Ohio State is going to lose to Michigan for a, what would that be, third straight season? No way. Okay, not only that, in year 4, no way Michigan beats them 4 years in a row because Michigan's not even be good this year. They lose most of their starters. They're going to have who knows who their quarterback is. Jim Harbaugh's gone, and he took the whole staff with him. There's no way Michigan's going to beat Ohio State for a 4th year in a row, and they beat them for a 4th year in a row. So I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably look stupid again, but I just don't see how Michigan beats Ohio State this year. I would actually say this, though. I think this Michigan team matches up much better on paper than last year's Michigan team did. So there could be a mental block right now, Ohio State. And of the 2 years, this year's team could be in more danger of losing again, in my opinion, just preseason than what I thought last year's Michigan team was. I didn't think I had a chance last year. And I think this Michigan team is going to be better, and I don't think this Ohio State team is going to be as good. But their roster is still way better than Michigan's. But let's see how the new coaching does and all that, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But I've been saying it now. What it'll be 4th year in a row. There's no way Ohio State loses to Michigan. And I said it the year they lost. I was like, Michigan's going to not beat Ohio State this year. The streak will continue, and I was wrong. And I'm going to be willing to be wrong again because I just don't think Michigan's as good as Ohio State.
Yeah, I legitimately, Tyler, appreciate the super chat, man. I have no answer to this question because I don't know. It's gone against every analytical. I thought Ohio State was going to absolutely boat race Michigan this year at home, legitimately, and I have no answer for you this year. Maybe, I don't know if it's a Ryan Day thing. I don't know if it's a program thing. I don't know if just Sharon Moore might have the number on Ohio State now too. I have no idea. Could not tell you. It would not surprise me if Michigan won. It would also not surprise me if Ohio State beat them by 25. Neither one would surprise me.
I'm just going to keep predicting it until
it'll happen eventually, right?
What's funny is the year that I'm like, you know what? I really like this Michigan team. Ohio State's got some issues. I think this is the year Michigan gets it done. That's the year Ohio State will be.
Yeah, 100%.
So I should just reverse it this year. Like, nope, this is the year Michigan's going to keep it rolling.
Just your ordinary Joe. Love the emoji, by the way, or the avatar, because I believe he's got his IB gear on.
He does.
So I love that.
Joe's always rocking IB gear.
Love it.
That guy.
Friggin' love it. Okay, so he says, do those who design offensive plays ever plan to somehow take advantage of the presence or likely position of the officials, a la setting a pick, etc.?
Yeah, anyone who properly teaches a mesh route is having there be some awareness of the that little official right there in the middle. Yes. That's the only one that I've ever.
They've moved that official around a little too much for my liking because they used to be basically at linebacker depth.
Yeah.
You could definitely use them to your advantage.
You will do some things like that with officials in the middle of the field, yes, but that's really the only one.
Yeah.
And you were correct, Vince. It used to be much more so than it is now. It's like, who are you? Like 98. Who's 98? Sorry, that's the official's number. I'm sorry, I'm calling out mic protection. And he's standing
he was right there
over the center, like in a linebacker stance. Like, is this guy about to blitz me or something like that? What is going on right now? So, that'll happen from time to time on like some mesh concepts and some over routes where you're gonna, if you step on that official's, right in front of that official's toes, it's his job to get out of the way or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that'll affect the defender a lot more than it will affect the offensive player, who's the one determining where they're going. So, yeah, I'd like to say, no, we would never do that. Yep. Yeah, we do.
Take it whatever advantage you can get.
Yep. Two-parter here from Wyatt Kerwin.
Oh, my goodness. All right. These questions are meant as a fun discussion rather than anything practical. All right, well, that's a good start. From the 2025 roster, which players would be fun to see return kicks and punts with straight speed, a.k.a. rocket? Which players would be fun to see return kicks and punts with speed and physicality, a.k.a. Tom Zbikowski?
So let's start with kick returns first. So if we're just talking about like who would be fun to see return from a pure speed standpoint, I mean, there's obviously Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Are two obvious ones. I mean, those are really my only.
Who are the straight line speed guys on the team?
Yeah, but like, I also want to be. I know it's not anything practical, but I can't completely disassociate my mind from practicality. KK Smith is one that I think of, but I don't know that KK has the strength, and so I can't. Will Pauling is allegedly really fast. He supposedly ran a 4.39 at Wisconsin. That's all he was on. What's interesting is him and Malachi Fields were both on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list last year. And Malachi, I think Will Paulding had, what was it, Trev? It was like a 4.39 and something like a 40-inch vertical or something ridiculous like that.
Yep.
So maybe him. So yeah. That would be, those would be my options. I think most of that speed is at running back and wide receiver.
Yeah. Cam Williams would be fun too.
He was pretty good. He was actually a pretty good kick returner in high school.
Yeah.
He's fast. He's just tall. What about punt returners? I think there's a couple more for me on this one. I would like to see Dallas Golden, speed and physicality wise, return of punts. That would be a fun one for me. I would probably.
So okay, so
KK's I'm more prone to KK here than I would punt return. Go ahead, Vince. What were you gonna say?
I know it's not the 25 roster, it's the 24 roster, and since this is fun, I'm just gonna throw this out there. I want to see Riley Leonard returning punts. I'll say it.
Okay.
I know he's the quarterback. I'm taking that off the table. I'm just saying, from a physicality standpoint, guys are going to be bouncing off.
Say anything that it's a fun discussion rather than anything practical. That's pretty impractical. So yeah,
100%. I would never put a quarterback to return a punt or a kick.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
I'm explaining why people at home don't think you're crazy for saying Riley Leonard. I'm saying, the guy said it's not meant to be practical.
Guys would be bouncing off of him
right now.
Like, I think it'd be great. Like, let's go.
That's why Vince is talking nonsense. It said not to be practical. It's meant to be fun. Vince is having some fun.
Yeah. Come on, it's Friday, people. Let's go. Let's
not take it so there. Seriously. You know, I'd like to see them try to tackle Charles Jagasaw. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
He ain't outrunning anybody, though. That's the thing.
It don't matter. He can drag him as far as Riley Leonard could run. So I would do none of those things. Let's see here. Anybody else, Trev, on? I mean, well, you know, here's actually one that would be talking about speed. I completely forgot about this one. Kick return, Leonard Moore. Punt return, Christian Gray. Leonard Moore in high school was a very dangerous kick returner, and he's might be your fastest punter on the team. So I would add him on the kick one. And then the punt ones we already talked about.
Yeah. I like that. I was gonna say Leonard Moore because I legitimately just forgot how fast he was because my mind immediately just went to offensive players. But yeah, he would be fun to watch return kicks for sure.
Muhammad Abdi, Brian, do you think it's realistic to expect Notre Dame to make the playoffs and get a first-round bye with this year's schedule with a freshman quarterback?
It's absolutely realistic and should be expected, yes.
Yes, agreed.
Muhammad, I know what you're saying, and I know why you're saying he's a freshman quarterback. But he's not a freshman quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman quarterback, and that matters. That matters because the whole run last year, C.J. Carr was on the sidelines for that. He saw that experience, and he was in those stadiums, and he saw he learned the lessons from the team last year. He's in year 2 of Mike Denbrock's offense. I also would say that it's not even a given, as we've said earlier, that a freshman is going to be the starting quarterback. He's still got to win that job, and Kenny Minchie could end up being there, but he's not a freshman quarterback. He's a redshirt freshman quarterback. That distinction matters because one guy is brand new and has only been here for a spring, and the other guy is now going into what would be his 4th semester in college. This fall will be C.J. Carr's 4th semester in college. He was an early enrollee in the spring. Actually, he was there in the winter. He was practicing with the team for the Oregon State bowl game.
Yeah, he enrolled early.
Right. So he's got the spring of 2024. He's got the fall of 2024, the spring of 2025, and now the fall of 2025. This will be his 4th semester in college. So I don't view it as a freshman there's a lot of second-year players that have been able to have success and win championships, much less make a 12-team playoff field. So yes, I would say that that's true. And then I would also add that there's a lot of teams that Notre Dame will be competing with that are in the same boat. Ohio State is starting a redshirt freshman at quarterback most likely this season. So they're a team that's going to be starting a younger player. Florida is a team that people are talking a lot about. Their quarterback is in the same grade that C.J. Carr was in. So there's plenty of quarterbacks, plenty of teams that are going to be starting, second-year quarterbacks this year. That matters. If this was a year dominated by just a bunch of veteran quarterbacks, and life might be a little bit tougher. But over half of the teams in my top 10 are going to be starting new quarterbacks, either guys that have never started or guys that have never started there at their school. So I think it's absolutely realistic to think that. What would be unrealistic is if they needed CJ Carr because we're going with the freshman quarterback thing. If they needed CJ Carr to carry the team and his ultimate ability to dominate was the primary reason, or going to have to be the primary driver behind them making a run, I'd be less optimistic about that. But this is not that team. Let's not also forget that some of Notre Dame's best seasons in the last 15 years were with guys in his grade at quarterback. Everett Golson was a redshirt freshman quarterback, took them to the national championship game in a 2-team playoff, essentially, led them to a championship. Why? Because the team around him was really good, and they just said, hey, we need you to make a few plays a game. 2015, Notre Dame had to go with a redshirt freshman quarterback and played in the Fiesta Bowl, and probably makes the college football playoff if there's a 12-team playoff back then. So we've seen this before. This is not abnormal. This is for even for Notre Dame. So I absolutely think it should be expected, and it's absolutely realistic for Notre Dame to be able to do that. The first round bye part is, that's a little bit tougher, but that could be tougher if Riley Leonard was coming back, because you never know what's going to happen, like losing to Northern Illinois. But absolutely make the playoff, and I would not at all be shocked if they get a first round bye. I'm not like betting my mortgage on them getting a first round bye.
But I feel like betting my mortgage on them making the playoff.
If I were such a person, yes.
Yeah. But I would never bet. First of all,
I would encourage no one.
I would like to be very clear here. I do dabble in betting, and I never really bet more than $5. I would never bet my mortgage because I have a family who needs a house to live in, and I would never.
If you want to stay married,
well,
if you put that kind of money on a football game,
oh my,
Vincent, it'd be like 11 o'clock at night. I hear this knock on my door. I go to the door. Vince is holding a pillow, a sheet, and a blanket under his arms. Like, I need a place to crash. Chris kicked me out. Why? I spent our mortgage on betting.
Like, even if I won that bet, the outcome would still be the same. I would still be at your house with a pillow and a blanket. Yes, there's no way.
Yeah.
But anyway,
making the playoff, I'd be shocked if they're not.
Yeah, me too. I would very easily put a $5 bet on that one. Yes, I agreed.
That's why I rent. Sorry.
Terrible advice. Don't listen to Trevor. Oh my goodness. Spoken like a guy that hasn't even had a 1-year anniversary yet.
That was awesome.
That's why
it's fantastic.
Oh my god.
That's fantastic. All right. ND, it just means more. In your opinion, who will have the biggest impact between Onye, Rubio, and Mukum if given equal snaps? Whose impact will reflect more statistically, and who will be more impactful on film playback?
If they have equal snaps, I'm going to say this, Trevor, and I'm curious what you think about this. They say they have equal snaps, because what that tells me, if Armel Mukum earns the same number of snaps as Rubio and Onye, one of two things has happened. One, they're both in missing time with an injury, or two, and this is going to be more in the spirit of the question, he's played well enough to where he's going to get the same number of snaps. If he does that, then I think he has the biggest impact. It'll either be him or Rubio, or him or Onye statistically, if they get equal reps. But I like the little part he said about the end about the film playback. That's where Gabriel Rubio is going to make his money this year. I don't know that Gabriel Rubio, he could potentially do so, but I don't know that you're putting Gabriel Rubio in there thinking he's going to get 13 tackles for loss and 6 sacks this year. I don't know that that's the expectation for him. But he's the guy you look back and say, he had 4 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, no sacks, only 1 pressure. But you're like, you want to know why this team ran for 75 yards this game? Watch 97 just blow up the center of the line for 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like it won't necessarily always be the statistical analysis that you look at where we're, after a post-game show where we're like, hey, so-and-so had 2.5 tackles for loss and there's 1.5 sacks and 8 tackles. That won't be a lot of what Rubio does based on what we've seen from him, but it'll be more of just dominating the point of attack where other people are making their money. Like Lewis Nix didn't put up a lot of numbers in 2012, but when you watch him play, you're like, that guy was so important to that defense in 2012.
Yeah.
And a lot of the production from other players was a lot of times due to Lewis's ability to just dominate the center of the line of scrimmage. And so that's kind of where I view that one.
We see that very much the same. The sexy numbers will go to Mukum and Onye. Just their style of play, their physical abilities. I mean, Rubio, look, he had a big hand into why Notre Dame's defense held Georgia to 62 rushing yards as a team in the Sugar Bowl. And you go back and you look at some of the plays that he had, and that wasn't even being like an effective dominant force for the complete 60 minutes. We were talking yesterday about how up and down his performance was. But impactful on the film, I would give it to Rubio. Impactful on, like, reflect more statistically would be Mukum and Onye if they had equal number of snaps, for sure.
Trev, you got anything to add to that? I mean, Vince, you got anything to add to that, or you
No, I'm with you guys. I everything you guys said is on point. I don't want to repeat what you guys said just to repeat it. I'm with you guys. Yep.
You the man.
Jason Smith, who are your top 3 candidates, Power 4, to have the number offense number one offense this season, and who are the top 3 to have a shot at being the best defense in the season or in the country? Excuse me.
So let's, for the sake of this conversation, let's take Notre Dame out, because I think we both agree that Notre Dame has a shot to be in it. Let's take them out. Who do we expect to be the best offenses and defenses in college football this year? That is a very interesting question. Defenses, if Clemson can shore up its secondary, they might have a shot to be in that conversation. They got to shore up their secondary first. They got a really good corner. The rest of their secondary is a little bit iffy. I think Penn State has a chance to once again be a really good defense, especially with the schedule they play. I think Texas has a shot to maybe be in that conversation. I'm not as sold on the Texas defense yet as maybe some of the national people, but this is just one of those years. I don't know that there's a lot of definitely elite defenses coming back.
Yeah.
I think this is going to sound crazy. I don't know if statistically it'll be that way, because I think their offense could struggle, but I think Michigan's defense this year's got a chance to be really good. I don't know if it's got a chance to be top 3 good, but I'm very curious to see what that defense looks like this year, because they're going to benefit from all the injuries they had last year that gave a bunch of somewhat talented players to very talented players opportunities to play. And their offensive schedule is not super daunting, but they got a shot. I'm not ready to put them in there yet. I'm trying to think of some other teams. Iowa's always going to have a say in that. I don't know that there's any Big 12 teams that I look at is that way. SEC-wise, I just don't love Georgia's secondary, and I think their D-line is good, but I don't think it's good as it's been in past years, and I don't view Georgia as that kind of team. There's a lot of hype about Alabama's defense. They could end up being really good, but they got to show me it. They got to show me something before I'm ready to jump in on that bandwagon. But I do think their defense is going to be improved. Yeah, I think Tennessee takes a bit of a step back this year, guys. I think Florida's got a chance to have a really sneaky good defense this season. Top 3 defense to me is a little bit tougher, and because of that. So, what are some teams that you guys look at and think, boy, that team's got a shot to have one of the best defense? I don't know that Ohio State's going to be able to repeat that. They lost too many players, and not that they're going to be bad on defense, but like top 3. That's going to be a little bit tougher just because of how much they lost personnel-wise and coaching-wise, but they'll still be pretty good. What say you guys?
You listed off a good number of them. I would put Clemson in that conversation for defense, Penn State in that conversation for defense. None others that come off the top of my head. Illinois, maybe. Top 3 in the country would be tough, but I know they were a pretty stout defensive team last year. I'll say this, a sleeper on offense. I don't think that they're going to be a top 3 offense in the Power 4, but I think they're going to be a better offense than what people give them credit for. I read something the other day that Texas A&M had like the number 1 or was one of the top 3 scoring offenses in the SEC last season in conference play. Like they averaged like 30.4 points per game in SEC games. And now that ideally they get their quarterback problems shored up a little bit, they're not bouncing them in and out of the lineup. I think that's something that could be interesting.
You saying that, I'm going to research it and show that you're correct, but also speaks to exactly why I said the SEC was not fun to watch last year.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M was ranked number 1 in the country last year, or number 1 in the SEC last year in scoring offense. Number 1. That's quite an accomplishment. They averaged 29.4 points per game. The previous year, LSU was number 1 in the conference at 42.9. 29.4 the year before. They scored more points per game the year before. They scored 30 the year before and ranked 6th in conference play. You had Georgia at 36. This is in conference play only. Georgia at 36, Missouri at 35.9, Alabama at 32.6, Florida at 30.5, and A&M at 30.8. They would have been 7th if you look at where they were the year before.
Crazy.
In conference play, in conference and scoring offense, to your point. So that is absolutely nuts that was, I mean, if you look at the ACC, there were 7 teams in the ACC that scored more points per game in conference play than the number 1 team in the SEC. I mean, that's just the Big Ten. There were 4: Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. Indiana scored 40 points a game. Oregon was 34.4, Penn State 31.3, Ohio State 31. So, like, there were no good offenses in that league last year. Like, that is just, good Lord, that explains why. Big 12, they would have been 9th in scoring.
That's crazy.
Please continue. But that's a great stat that you pulled out.
That's crazy. Thank you, sir. Defenses, none other than what you had already talked about. We're in the same boat there. Offenses, I think Alabama has a shot to get back there. I really like their receiving core. I like Jam Miller at running back, and if they can get their quarterback situation figured out, I think it's going to be a better fit for what Kalen DeBoer wants to do. And him getting his offensive coordinator back from Washington. Wouldn't surprise me if Alabama was in the top 3.
Indiana's got to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, they were number 2 in the country in scoring last year. The schedule's tougher. I get that. But I also think they have a little bit – you could argue they have more talent this year than they had last year. I like the Mendoza kid. I like him better than O'Rourke. I think their receiving core is going to be very dynamic. They obviously have Surratt coming back. You got Omar Cooper Jr. coming back. They got Holden Stace in the transfer portal tight end. They got obviously Pat Coogan. They have, I think, both of their tackles coming back. Their running back situation is good. So I think Indiana, again, should be really good. I think LSU will be a team that could potentially have a jump like that. They've got to make a pretty big jump in scoring offense, in my opinion. Last year, LSU scored 30.5 points per game, but I looked at their schedule and they have coming back. Maybe they jump back in. I have some doubts about them. Somebody in the chat just mentioned LSU. But I think Indiana's got to be in that conversation, guys. I think Texas Tech's got to be in that conversation again, too, because they scored a lot of points last year. Their quarterback comes back. They do lose their running back, but they got a lot of transfer guys. So I think they're a team a Power 5 team that I look at, Power 4 team that I look at and say they've got a shot to be there as well. What do you think about Louisville, Trev? Because last year they finished 7th in the country in scoring offense, and they were, tied for 5th amongst Power 5 teams. Scored 36.5 points per game. I look at Louisville. I think their offensive line can maybe take a step back. I don't know about Miller Moss at running back, but I like their receiving core a lot. I like their tight end talent, and their running back room is one of the 4 or 5 best in college football. And it's Jeff Brahman. I actually think I'm not a big Miller Moss fan, but I do think Miller Moss fits his system really well. So Louisville's another one that could be in there. What do you think about them?
Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on Louisville. I have a lot of questions about Miller Moss.
Sure.
You know, say what you want about Lincoln Riley. If there's one thing that cat can do, it's develop quarterbacks. And for him to make the decision to go away from Miller Moss is interesting. But I also love Jeff Brom as an offensive coach as well. And so it's going to be up for debate with him.
SMU, that's another one. Yeah. They were tied for 5th amongst Power 5 teams in scoring last year at 36.5 points per game. They were tied with Louisville. They got their quarterback back. They got a lot of their receivers back. They have a lot of talent coming back. Trying to think of some teams. Somebody said Clemson. Maybe. They got to show it to me. They got to prove it to me. But it would not shock me, especially with their schedule, if Clemson is in that conversation. So, there's some teams like that. I'm just trying. Syracuse is not. I mean, Alabama was at 33.8. Trevor, they've only got to improve 4 points in their average last year to be in the top 4 from what last year was. Miami was number 1 last year. I don't think they're going to be in the top 3 or 4 this year, but they're not going to go down to like 30 points a game either.
No,
they're just not going to be what they were last year. They're going to be a different type of team. So Oregon, some of these teams that I think people look at Oregon, and Oregon wasn't even in the top 15 last year with all the guys they had. Like I think there's some team people are thinking that some of these teams are still like kind of what they were. Oregon was a pretty special offense in 2023. LSU was a pretty special offense in 2023, but they had elite quarterbacks, like veteran elite quarterbacks. With all due respect to Garrett Nussmeier, he's not an elite quarterback. He's a veteran, but he's a good quarterback, but he's not elite. And the receiving core is good, but it's not what it was a couple of years ago. So those are some of the teams off the top of my head that I look at. And a lot of times the scoring offenses aren't necessarily the best offenses. It's just your system is designed to score more points. And the way you play games, or your defense may stink. I mean, Texas Tech scored 37.6 points per game last year. That was 4th in the country. Does anybody think Texas Tech had the 4th best offense in college football last year? No. It was good, but it wasn't that. But those are some of the teams I look at and view. So,
fair enough.
Yeah, good question, Jason. Well, we're going to actually have a show later in the summer. Trev, you've seen it's on the schedule where we're going to rank the top 10 offenses in college football.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this will be part of that. Ours is more meant to be about effectiveness and then impact as opposed to just straight scoring or yards. But that'll be a fun conversation. We'll do a little bit more research on that as we get to it. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. Good question.
I don't know how you guys left off the Iowa offense, but whatever. Tristan Schaup has a question. Since 2000, what running backs come to mind when you think of outstanding pass blocking?
Well, Kyron Williams. I mean, when you talk about Notre Dame, first one that pops in my head is Kyron Williams. He was pretty good pass blocker. Tony Jones, if I remember correctly, was a pretty good pass blocker. Theo Riddick was a pretty good pass blocker that I remember. I don't remember pass blocking of a lot of the early 2000 running backs. I just don't remember it. But recently, like the last 10 years or so, those are guys that pop up for me as guys that were pretty good pass blockers for Notre Dame. Anybody else kind of pop in your guys' head?
No, Kyron Williams was the only one that I could think of.
Yeah. I think that's definitely an easy pick for number 1. Good question, Tristan. Let's go back up here. Got another one from John A1.
If Notre Dame has playoff runs like last season consistently, do you think they'll be more dangerous flipping prospects late at the early signing period?
Occasionally. I think occasionally they will. I think occasionally they'll be more willing to flip a kid or two occasionally. I think what Notre Dame is still going to do is still fill up by the end of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone slower than they have in the past, but they still would like to fill up by the time the season starts for the most part. So I think if they have those type of runs consistently, John, the bigger impact will be they'll just start getting more of the kids they want early.
Yeah.
But let's say they get to the end of the process and they're just, they're able to, we need a big time receiver. We just had a big time year. We have room for another receiver. Let's go into let's say that Notre Dame there's like a Jeremiah Smith or a Ryan Williams coming out and that type of big time player. And you just went out and your quarterback won the Heisman Trophy and you're making a run of the title game or, and your receiver, you're going to have a, guy that, let's say Cam Williams breaks out or Jaden Greathouse a monster year or whatever. And all of a sudden you're in contention, for the Biletnikoff and all that. And that 5-star receiver committed to Alabama. Bama had a tough year. They went 8-4. Their offense. You think Notre Dame will have a shot to flip that kid? Even if they have a good year, they'll absolutely have a shot. So you'll see that occasionally. but I don't think it's going to be a regular occurrence because I think they're still going to want to fill up with kids through the more normal process. I think the flips might happen earlier. The flips will happen over the summer where they'll flip a kid committed to somewhere else and, get them. But let's say Cohen Brown commits to Texas and Notre Dame goes out there and throws for a bunch of yards and scores a bunch of points, and the Texas offense is more run oriented and all that. And Notre Dame plays for the title and Texas gets knocked out in the quarters. Could they have a shot to flip a Cohen Brown late in the process? Yeah. Kid that he liked them a lot early, that kind of thing. Sure. But it's not going to be like a regular occurrence the way like that Bama was doing it because that was part of Bama's strategy. Is they would just they just knew they could flip a bunch of kids late, and they would. I don't know that that's going to be Notre Dame's strategy, but occasionally will happen, sure.
Yeah, if they're consistently going to the not championship, but making runs and doing these different things, like they're going to be able to get guys earlier than flipping them. Like I think if Notre Dame becomes consistently really good and all of those things, they're going to be able to pull guys and keep them. And I don't think their strategy would ever be to flip guys, right? Like you said, it could happen on occasion, but if they're consistently good, because we get the question a lot, if Notre Dame has a really good passing offense, are they going to be able to flip some wide receivers, blah, 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 blah. I just think if Notre Dame as a team is really good, they're going to be filling up their class with the guys that they want, and they're not going to be hunting to flip guys. That's how I think it's going to go.
Agree. Great point, Vince.
Been waiting like an hour and a half to make one because I haven't made one yet. No, I'm just kidding. Aiden Benami, is this weekend Notre Dame's biggest recruiting weekend of 2025, including 2025 so far?
I mean, I guess I'm not I'm not really quite understanding what you're asking. Is this weekend the biggest recruiting weekend of 25, including 2025 so far? Yeah, I mean, probably if we're just talking about this calendar year, sure. There was a couple spring weekends that were huge, but it's all about the finish. What do you finish your class off with? You could be a top 3 class right now with 16 commits, and they are a top 3 class right now with 16 commits. But if you finish kind of mediocre, then you're not going to be a top class. So the finish is important, and there's some big time kids on campus this weekend. I think next weekend's pretty important too, but just from a volume standpoint of who you're looking to get, Kari Adams, Joey O'Brien, Caden Finley, Devin Fitzgerald, Grayson McHugh, guys like that. Yeah, this weekend's pretty big for a lot of those positions, but next weekend's huge for the D line because you've got Dre Quinn and Elijah Golden coming on the campus next weekend. It may not be as much volume next weekend, but just big picture, I'd say this is probably the biggest recruiting weekend. And you can even get real technical with and say, well, it's important that they fight. And I know that they're doing this fight to make sure that like some of the guys that are visiting next week don't commit somewhere else this weekend and then not visit because they got some offer, take it now, or we're going to pull it, like Ohio State did with a kid that just committed to them recently, and like Michigan's done with some kids, which is fine. I don't have problems schools doing that if the kids want to fall for it. Penn State tried to do that with a couple kids, and they were like, you can take that thing, shine it up real nice, turn that some, sideways and stick it straight up your can't, you know what I mean? Like if a kid's going to fall for it, then fall for it. That may be where the kid ultimately wanted to go, and that's why he didn't visit. But, so there's some of that. So that would also, if you factor that into this weekend too, then it's in a much easier situation. But yeah, I would say this weekend's probably the biggest. There's a couple spring ones that I might have to have a conversation with you about in March and April that were huge as well. But when you talk about the close, I'll say that's pretty important. Yeah. All right, let's get to this one from Indy. It just means more.
Who, in your opinion, has a better chance to make first, second team All-America this year? Greathouse, Wagner, Bowen, Schuler, or Raridan?
First or second team who has a better chance? Of that group, I would go with either Emil Wagner or Drake Bowen. I think all those guys could be that. Jaden Greathouse, I just don't think is. We've talked about this a lot, Trevor. For a receiver to make first or second team, he's got to put up big numbers. I don't care if you're the most effective receiver in college football. If the volume's not there, you're just not going to be first or second team. So that's my deal there. Don Schuler, a lot of that's driven by perception and interceptions and things like that. He certainly has a chance. And Eli Raridan has a chance. But Eli's struggle is going to be he's going to have to put up monster numbers to overcome the fact that he's not really going into the season as someone that people are looking at as one of the best tight ends. But he's certainly capable of it as well.
And Neil Wagner's getting love like preseason.
But because like Vince, you and I have talked about this in the past. It's like a lot of All-American lists are it's partly by your play, but the guys that come into the season with sort of the high expectations a lot of times will get that unless you have volume.
Right.
Nobody was talking about Xavier Watts being an All-American coming into 2023, but then the volume was there. And then, 7 interceptions, leads the country. He has the huge prime time game where he picks off Caleb Williams twice and returns a fumble for a touchdown. If he doesn't have that game and his numbers are the same, he's probably not a unanimous All-American. That's what factors into those things. It's not right or not wrong.
Right.
It just is what it is.
Well, and with offensive linemen, if you're getting preseason love, unless you do something that's like really bad, with offensive linemen, it's about name recognition. It's about these lists preseason. And that's why I would go with Emil Wagner on this list because of that reason.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. It's Wagner and Bowen for me. Schuler could be in there depending on how many interceptions he tallies. But I mean, I know he was a true freshman last year, but I mean, so was Jeremiah Smith. Ryan Williams wasn't even on ESPN's first or second team All-American.
Yeah. Why? Because of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He had 800 some yards. I mean, there were not that many receivers better than Ryan Williams, but again, it's like you said, it's about yards. I mean, Nick Nash, I think, was a first or second team All-American last year. He was a good player. I watched him play. He was not one of the 4 best receivers in college football last year, but his numbers were. Like I saw somebody made an argument. It was like Nick Nash should have won the Biletnikoff. And I'm like, okay, he put up good numbers, but look who he did it against. He's a talent, there was other guys I would have given it to who were just more dominant players, but it's a lot of this stuff is just about just raw production, not necessarily performance. Some guys do both. Some guys put up great numbers, and like Ashton Genty, he put up monster numbers, but was also an elite dominant player. That's a different conversation. Those guys are no-brainers.
Yeah, for sure.
PJC1122. Brian, you mentioned before that you think Carlisle Holiday would have done playing for Holtz. How you think he would have done playing for Holtz. What about Arnez Battle? What if he had been born 10 years earlier and took over after Tony Rice?
Yeah, I mean, I think Arnez could have done really well as an option quarterback. I just have always felt like he just seemed more like a receiver to me. He just built more like a receiver, ran like a receiver. I always felt Arnez was a guy you wanted to get the ball to outside, not necessarily be a quarterback. I never looked at him as a quarterback the same way I did Carlisle. But yeah, I mean, he would have been a good quarterback in that offense. I just think Carlisle had a little bit more natural passing instinct than Arnez had, in my opinion. And like Carlisle Holiday was a legitimate big time option quarterback. He just wasn't a drop back quarterback. I don't know that Arnez was going to be a big time option quarterback. I think Arnez would have been a guy I still would have wanted lining up a flanker and throwing the ball to and getting the ball to on reverses and jets and screens and things like that. That's where I still think he would have fit in Lou Holtz's offense, because they didn't do jets, but they did reverses. I mean, you remember was it Adrian Jarrell's from Notre Dame's, I think, first or second touchdown against Florida State, Vince, you remember this, was on an option reverse to Adrian Jarrell. They ran option one way, flipped it to Adrian the other way. He goes and runs for a touchdown. So like stuff like that for Arnez he'd have been really good in that regard. Like put him in put him in the offense where Lake Dawson played and see what Arnez would have done in that offense. Cardinell eventually became a good receiver, but he was just more of a natural athlete. I think he would have been a much more natural quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Good call on that one.
Michael S., thank you for the super chat. How do you see the quarterback competition assessment differing this year from the lead up to the 2016 season? Denbrock was here for both. What must he do differently to make the best choice?
He doesn't need to do anything differently because Mike Denbrock had no say in who the starting quarterback was in 2016.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
That was a Brian Kelly decision. That was
Yes.
a Brian Kelly, Mike Sanford decision. That was not a Mike Denbrock decision.
Right.
Now, I don't know that Mike Denbrock would have made a different decision. I have no idea. But I can assure you that this is different because Mike Denbrock's going to have a lot more say in who the starting quarterback is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very different scenario. So what does he got to do different? Not be working for Brian Kelly. Mission accomplished. He's not working for Brian Kelly.
That was good. That was solid.
I get him every now and then.
Mark Avalone. If you were born 100 years earlier and are now a fan in the 1920s, how would the style of play affect your fandom, excluding the impact of seeing Rockne live?
I don't know that I would have been as big of a college football fan back then. I don't. I mean, 1920s, if I'm putting myself back then, I probably would have been more of a baseball fan.
Yeah.
Because it was more
baseball was legit.
Yeah.
And for sure. And football was still kind of in its infancy back in the 1920s.
Was the NFL even a thing back then? I mean,
there was like random professional. Remember, there was like, they were paying guys under the table to play professional while they were still in college.
It says right here it was founded in 1920.
Okay.
And it wasn't. I don't remember it like any of those great teams from the 20s. So but. Yeah, I mean, college football would have been a thing, but like back then, it was like Army was good. It was Cornell, it was Yale, Dartmouth. Teams like that were also really
Army,
good.
Navy, like
like Red. I mean, like I don't know. It part of it too depends on where you were born. If you were living in Chicago, you were probably a much bigger college football fan because you had Notre Dame not that far, but then you were watching Red Grange in Illinois. At Illinois playing in Soldier Field. I mean, so just part of it depends on where you were.
Sure.
If you were from the South, I don't know how big of a college football fan you would be. I don't know. There's some teams down there. I don't know how big college football was back then. If you were in New York, you were probably a baseball fan. Because there wasn't TV access like there is now. You weren't watching games on TV, so you'd had to go to games or read about them in the newspaper. So
the old newspaper.
Yeah, I don't know how big of a football fan I would have been if I was born in the 20s. So
yeah, I think it would have been baseball for me too.
Yeah. So plus, I mean, if I was born 100 years early, I'd have been born in 1978. I might not be alive. I might have got drafted into World War I, and I might not even be here in the 20s. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of glad I wasn't born, then, right? Post Civil War. I'm glad that I'm not having that option.
I mean, you'd have been in your mid 30s during the Civil War.
Yeah.
I don't know that you get drafted
in Civil War, World War I.
I mean, World War I. You'd have been in your mid 30s.
A lot of people
you
died
getting drafted in your mid. I understand that. I don't know.
But me, man. I might have joined.
Oh, okay, fair.
Fair
enough.
I think I just straight up would have been drafted.
Yeah,
like your age wise, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I would have been born in 1897. If I was born 100 years early,
probably would have 100% been drafted.
Yeah, in 1914, I would have been 636. So for all I know, I might have just joined back then. But yeah, there were some other conflicts I might have had to be part of. Who knows if I'd have been alive, if I'd have got some disease or something. Like I'm glad I was born when I was born. Very glad.
Yeah, honestly, there's a lot that goes into mine.
I have a lot of calluses on these hands, brother. I would not have been. You know what I mean?
I would. Yeah.
Go ahead, Trev.
I was about to say, there's a lot would have had to happen for me to get drafted to the United States military around World War I time. To be fair, I wouldn't have been adopted. It would have been a whole thing.
Yeah, a little different era.
Yeah.
No, what war were they fighting in Korea back then, Trev?
Good Lord, I'm probably just trying to prevent Japan from invading again.
Different problems, man. Different problems.
Yeah.
Trev would have been too busy working on a railroad out in California.
Dude, I'm saying I would have either been there in San Francisco putting together some railroad. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's great. Oh man.
John A1, is there a major program that could be a negative overall for Notre Dame if they made an agreement with Notre Dame similar to Clemson?
Is there a major program that could be a negative overall for Notre Dame if they made an agreement with Notre Dame similar to Clemson? So
Stanford.
No, like, explain, Vince. Explain.
Well, no, I just don't think that they give a crap about football, and I just don't think that would help them out at all.
Yeah.
So it would not be a negative from an academic perspective and all of those kinds of things, but
you do need some easy wins on there.
You do. No, you're not wrong about that. But I don't think that would be a net positive though either. You know what I mean? So maybe it's not a negative, but I also don't think it's a positive. Wow. Beef Eater's coming at you hard.
Jason Smith said BD might have had more appreciation for triple option. Brother, 1920 was pre-triple option. Like, we're going pre-op triple option on that one, my friend. But
wow.
Yeah. See what you started, Trev.
I know.
Ricketts.
I know.
Oh my goodness, that's great. That's good stuff.
They're already out here writing your eulogy.
Yeah.
All right. DMACAK.
D Masak, I believe.
Okay. D Masak 2. Don't forget the 2.
We've met him, Vince, at a couple tailgates.
Oh, okay. Cool. Very nice.
He was the cat from Louisiana. Remember?
I do. Last year, it seemed as though Marcus Freeman used the NIU game as a way to keep the team motivated. How does he replicate that mentality this year to prevent another letdown like against NIU?
I don't know that it's about mentality in response to something negative as much as this is about it's prepare better, prepare differently. You know, he talked about that one of the open parts of the interview with him that we were at, Vince. He talked about it's about learning lessons to say, what did we do in the summer? What do we do in fall camp that led us to the point where we were vulnerable to that type of letdown performance? And then how do we correct that? So I think that's a bigger focal point of that than, finding some rallying cry around that. But if you're going to say, well, what could be that rallying cry? I know exactly what it is because they're already doing it. And it's the Ohio State loss. It's the fact that they didn't play Notre Dame football in their view against Ohio State, and that there's a lot of players and a lot of coaches that feel like they are upset with themselves the way they played in that game because they felt they had a better shot to win if they would have played better football. And I don't know if they would have, but we talked about that at the time, guys. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Ohio State did to Notre Dame on the Notre Dame defense, but there's also a lot of things Notre Dame offense did where it wasn't about the Ohio State defense. It was just, how do you miss that wide open guy? How do you miss that easy block that could have maybe gone for a 75-yard touchdown? Like, it was a lot of just shooting yourselves in the foot. And I think that's the frustration. They weren't overwhelmed talent-wise in the same way they were against Bama in 12 and 20, or even Ohio State in 2015. They've closed the gap more than that. So I think that's what they're using for that type of motivation. But at the end of the day, that's not going to help you going into a Northern Illinois type of game because you're not going to have the same motivation. It's more about the standard that was set from that of this is Notre Dame football. This is how we prepare. This is how we play no matter who's on the other sideline. And that's where leadership comes into play. I mean, one of your sixth-year players is talking about, like it's a joke, on the Here Come the Irish thing that I didn't know who they were. Like, well, that's not something that I would have admitted publicly, especially after that game, and still had no shame on it, and it's like, don't have that in your mindset. The other good news is there's no MAC teams on the schedule this year, so it's not as many of those teams that you're just going to overlook that to that degree. I mean, maybe Purdue, but
ouch.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Northern Illinois would have smacked Purdue last year. Like,
Purdue was bad.
Me, Trev, you, and like 8 dudes from the chat could probably have hung 20 on Purdue last year. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying, man. Like, they were freaking terrible.
A lot of Purdue hate here.
It's not hate; it's stating the obvious. It's like,
it is. It is.
Like, it was one of the worst defenses in like the history of college football, man. Like, they didn't just lose games last year, dude. They got annihilated in games last year. They gave up 39.9 points per game last year. And the only reason it was that low is because they shut out Indiana State.
Yep.
Here, let's just go to FBS. Scoring defenses against FBS opponents only. Purdue gave up 43.5 points per game in 11 games against FBS opponents.
Oh, it's crazy.
They gave up 66 to Notre Dame, 38 to Oregon State, 28 to Nebraska, 52 to Wisconsin, 50 to Illinois, 35 to Oregon, 26 to Northwestern, 45 to Ohio State, 49 to Penn State, 24 to Michigan State, and 66 to Indiana. So they had 2 games where they gave up over 60 points, 2 more games they gave up over 50 points, and 2 other games they gave up over 40 points. So, yeah, they were pretty awful last year.
The stat that I will always throw out, and I will look for any excuse to do it, if Purdue started every single game last year with a 34-0 head start, they'd be 6-6.
Bowl eligible, baby. Let's go.
And I think if they had a 34-point head start in like 3 or 4 of their 6 losses, they still would have lost by double digits.
Good Lord.
Which is just.
Yeah, they were really bad. There's no doubt about it. They're just not good at football.
Yeah. No.
Just not good at football. All right, Domer Grizz with Coach Shrewsbury's success in recruiting. A little basketball. His seat is relatively cool. But what do you need to see from the team this year to believe he's the right coach to succeed on the court as well?
This is going to sound very snarky, but it's not meant to be. They actually have to start succeeding on the court. I mean, that's really what it boils down to for me. What does that look like? I think you've got to go into the last month of the season with an opportunity to make a run at an NCAA tournament berth. That's what it boils down to me. And you've got to have more competitive losses, and you've got to win a couple more big games. Don't lose the North Carolina game late like they did. I mean, like last year's team was so frustrating early on. Like by the end of the year, they were playing better basketball, but then there was that stretch before that where they were pretty terrible. But if you remember, like the beginning ACC play, there was a bunch of games that they had late leads and just blew the lead.
Just blew it.
Like, don't blow those leads. So they're not that far away, in my opinion. But you're going to be very talented, but you're going to be very young. It's just going to come down to just play better basketball. What does that mean? Be smarter, be a smarter defensive team. Don't go into these lulls in games where like the ball just gets stuck in mud. Just run your offense more effectively and more consistently. Play better defense and just do some of those things. But he was handicapped a little bit last year, especially with Marcus Burton missing so much time early, where his team they just didn't have the talent to compete against teams they were playing against. They didn't have post scorers that were any threat whatsoever to scoring. And that's something that's going to have to change. And that's why some of the pickups the last couple of years were good, including even Garrett Sundra last year, a guy like Sir Muhammad, who's a wing, Jalen Harrelson, who are wings, but they're wings that can attack the rim. They're wings that can go down low and post up, wings that can slash, that can, you've got to account for the basket, the area around the basket more with this team and next year's team more than you had to last year, where Trev, with all due respect to Tay Davis, nobody that was good was worried about Tay Davis taking the game over offensively, other than just getting rebounds and putbacks because he was really athletic. That's the big thing that they're missing. And I think that's what some of these, even though they're wings, some of these young guys like Sir Muhammad and Jalen Harrelson and maybe Garrett Sundra, who is a more of a post. You've got a couple kids coming in this year, the 7-footer, almost 7-footer they're bringing in this year. I don't know how much he's going to be able to give as a rookie, but certainly the kid they got in the 26 class that they just got the other day has got some offensive potential. You just got to be more balanced inside and out offensively, but the ball's just got a better move. You just avoid those ruts that they got themselves into last year. If they can do that, then they're going to have a shot to, if they can make win a couple games in the tournament, then yeah, maybe they're getting in.
Yeah. Look, the talent level of the roster last year just wasn't there.
Yeah.
You weren't sniffing any sort of tournament bid, and you had the number 1 score in the ACC.
Yeah.
That's just plain and simple. And so, there were players in the starting lineup last year. I loved what they did and the time that they put in for Notre Dame. Love Matt Alaco and his decision to come to Notre Dame and he transferred in from Princeton, but on a better built roster, he's not your starting 3 guard. That's just fact of the matter.
He's a really nice shooter off. He is essentially like, you guys remember when Michigan made their run under John Beilein, the role Duncan Robinson had.
Yeah.
That's similar to what Matalacco would have been doing. He, maybe at best he's your Steve, Vasturia that Notre Dame had in the run they had with Jerry and Grant and those guys. But the other thing too is a guy that I think is going to be key this year is actually Braden Shrewsbury.
Yep.
Because I think the talent on the team is such, and Vince, I'd be curious to hear your opinion on this. The talent on the team is such that last year Braden kind of had to be your number 2 scorer. And Braden's another guy that I feel is more of he's a role player. He's a good role player where he doesn't have to carry a team, but he can come off the bench, be a sharpshooter, give you some good minutes, play some defense. I think the fact that with Cole Serta, the reps he got last year with Ryder Frost coming in, with Jalen Harrelson, I think some of those guys are going to be playing sort of the 2 spot at times this year, where they're going to have just a bigger lineup, and then you can maybe bring him in more. You're going to have a little bit of a deeper bench to go to. I think Braden Shrewsbury getting into more of a role player mode, coming off the injury, could benefit him, because the other thing too, to your point, Trev, because you had to start guys like Matalacco, you had nothing coming off the bench from a scoring standpoint. Nothing. And if those guys can find those niche roles, whether it's Sir, whether it's, Cole Serta, whether it's Braden Shrewsbury, whether whoever it is, being able to have some guys can come off the bench and give you something could be big for this team too. Because Marcus Burton's going to wear down if they're going to need him to play 37 plus minutes a game, Vince, and be your entire offense. It's just, by the time you get to postseason, that kid's going to be worn out.
Oh, yeah, be their entire offense for 37 minutes. That can't happen. Can he play 37 minutes a game? Absolutely. Now, here's the thing about – you guys have all made great points. My point is, in year 1 with Shrewsbury, he had to remake the entire roster. Yeah. That team played defense, and they were easy to cheer for. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that takes zero talent to play defense.
Played hard.
They played hard, and it was easy to cheer for that team. They didn't do that in year 2. And that was the disappointing part for me. Not even that they didn't win some games, but the way they were losing those games, like you said earlier, if they just played defense like they did in year 1, they win those games.
Some of them, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was very disappointing in year 2. They need to get back to year 1 effort and defense in year 3, and this will be a completely different team. That was problem number 1 for me. Problem number 2 was the talent level. They had no answers when Burton went down. They had no answers. The team completely fell apart offensively when Marcus Burton was on the shelf. Absolute just disaster. And then when he came back, they relied on him way too much, and he wasn't 100%, and it was ugly. And then the season was over. So now you're counting on this recruiting class to come in and make some serious noise. Now in basketball, that's much more possible to be, to happen.
Especially the high level like a Jalen Harrelson is. I mean, let's be honest, 5 stars in basketball.
That means something.
Yeah.
Totally. No, 100%. Yeah. And Marcus Burton needs guys to play off of, right? He can't just be the man like he was at Penn High School. You know what I mean? Because even in Penn High School, he had some sharpshooters on the outside that when they collapsed on him, he could dish out and they would drain him. And those guys are on scholarship someplace playing basketball because of that. You know what I mean?
Not have that last year.
He did not have that. And you could tell that he didn't have that and that he knew he didn't have it because he was trying to do too much.
Vince, there were some late minute possessions where it's like they're like, we're going to triple team him and beat him up because we want him to pass the ball because we don't want him. I mean, you can't win that way.
Literally daring other players to step up. Literally daring.
100%. So if they could just get back to the way they played defense in year 1, and then you allow these young guys to come in and make an impact and moving the ball around, this team is going to be in the conversation. This is what they need to be. They need to be in the conversation for, as a bubble team, as a team that if they win a couple games in the ACC tournament they're in, they need to be in that conversation in early March. If they're out of it by then, like they were in year 2, we can start having some discussion about where this program is headed. If they're in the discussion to make the tournament, or they're in the tournament by the end of, by middle March, let's roll. They're in the right direction, and they got the kid coming in the 26 class. Things are starting to look pretty solid, right?
Yeah.
They have to be in the discussion for making the tournament. Have to
Yeah.
be.
And you have to have depth to do that, guys. I mean, I still say I'm not one of those people that's like, you got to play 10 guys. That's just not happening. But when you look at some of those teams they had back in the day, I mean, you look at the second final, the Elite Eight team they had. Obviously, you had Demetrius Jackson, Zach August, VJ Beecham, Steve Vastoria, Bonzie Colson. They also had Matt Ryan coming off the bench as a shooter. You had Matt Farrell who could come in and give you some minutes. You had Rex Pfluger. You look at the year before, you had your starters. You had Jaron Grant, Pat Connaughton, Zach August, Demetrius Jackson, Vastoria. But then you had VJ Beecham coming off the bench. You had Bonzie Colson coming off the bench. Austin Torres would come off the bench and give you some minutes. Like, you got to have some guys who can come give you good minutes off the board, whether it's a guy coming in playing lockdown defense who doesn't score a lot, a guy that can shoot. I mean, the best teams are going to have those type of players, and you've got to. And that's what I thought hurt them last year. Is I just felt like they were getting nothing off the bench. I mean, it just like it was a liability. Like, don't fall behind even too far when those guys come off the bench.
Right.
This team should be very different in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that's going to be Coach Shrewsbury determining what your starting lineup, because you don't always start your best five in basketball.
Correct.
And there are times when, Kevin McHale was the sixth man of the year for the Celtics, and everybody knew he was he was a star, but it was kind of like, but we're trying to manage his minutes and do some different lineups and different things, and that's just kind of part of it. And that's going to make for a very interesting situation with him when you look at, sort of how this team gets put together. But I do think they have to show a pretty big jump this year. I don't know that it's like get to the tournament and make a run.
No,
but
it doesn't need to be that.
I do think you need to be a tournament team to really feel comfortable that this program, that he can coach as well as he can recruit. I do think in a 68 team tournament, I don't think it's unheard of to say that, or out of line to say, I think this team should be in the tournament this year. You just signed an elite recruiting class, top 10 recruiting class. You've got one of the best players in the conference coming back. You've got some big guys down low that can give you some minutes to rebound, and you don't need them to. You've got some talented young freshmen coming back. Sir Muhammad was a top 50 player. Cole Serta was a top 100 player. Garrett Sundra did some things. I'm sorry, this team should be barring something dramatic happening. I do think this team should make the NCAA tournament or at least be. We're going into the selection Sunday saying they've got a shot.
Right. They're sending a camera to South Bend for the selection show, right? This team, they still play in the ACC. And I realize the ACC was down last year, but they should be in the top half of the ACC. Yeah. And if you're in the top half of the ACC, you got a great shot of making the tournament because it's still the ACC. So they should be able to do that. And the other thing I said on the evening show the other day was that they got to make the Joyce Center a place where it's difficult for visiting teams to come in. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to get back to that point. Like, it used to be that way.
Sure did.
That's on your product.
Right. 100%.
Because the crowd was pretty wild for the women's team early last year.
100%.
Put a good product on the court, and the crowd will have your back.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the Joyce Center has to be a place that's difficult for the North Carolinas and the Dukes and all these teams in the ACC to come and play. Because I don't think it is.
I remember covering the team when they beat number 1 Syracuse a few years ago.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
It's just not that way right now, and it needs to be. So that would be my other thing.
Trev, you had something else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, just overall, at the bare minimum, make a run in the ACC tournament and be above 500. And that will then play, and then that will then be a byproduct into getting you in a position to possibly make the actual big dance. But yeah, no, you guys are 100% spot on. 100%.
We got a super chat from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate you. Who is the one impact player from a prior Notre Dame team that you would put on the current team on both sides of the ball? My pick is Golden Tate and Justin Tuck.
Trev, what do you think?
On offense, I would go with Will Fuller. And then on defense, an edge rusher, whether it be, take your pick, Justin Tuck, Stephon Tuitt. I mean, bring back Isaiah Foskey, just a healthy edge rusher.
An elite edge rusher, yeah.
Yeah.
What say you, Vince?
I'm bringing back Jalen Smith on defense because I can put him all over the dang place, and he's going to be successful. And so I'm bringing back him on defense. And then offensively, I'm going to bring back Floyd. I'm bringing back Floyd Go out there and just give me some catches, brother. Like that's where I'm at.
My offensive one's easy. It's Rocket Ismail.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Rocket at Z, Jaden Greathouse at slot, and Malachi Fields at the boundary? You know, Vince, I'm a huge Michael Floyd fan, but I kind of feel like you've kind of got a pretty good boundary. I want a guy that complements that guy. Golden Tate wouldn't be a bad pick either. Samardzija wouldn't be a bad pick. He could play Z in this offense, but Rocket Ismail at Z, and you could interchange him and Greathouse. So that's an easy one. I also wouldn't be completely opposed to having Quentin Nelson playing guard for Notre Dame this year, or
he was my second pick.
Joe Walt,
yeah,
as your left tackle,
offensive line. Yeah,
I wouldn't be too upset about that. Defensively, I'm with you, Trev. Give me an edge rusher. Justin Tuck seems like a good option, but yeah, that would be a good one there. But Justin Tuck give me 2003 version of Justin Tuck. Yeah, I'll take that. That was a really good player. Really good player. I mean, but I'd take Stephon Tuitt. I would take, even like you said, even Isaiah Foskey. There's some guys there, but yeah, that'd be my Jalen Smith's not a bad pick either at all, Vince. I mean, yeah, you're pretty loaded at linebacker, but that's a freak.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's
right. I could bring him off the edge. I could do. There's a lot of things I could do with him.
You could say that about like Harrison Smith,
right?
Like that's another one. Like, yeah, they don't necessarily quote unquote need him, but like that's a freak. That's a stud.
Right.
Yeah.
Tyler Evans with the super chat. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate another one from you, Trevor. As the resident Bengals fan, do you think your first round draft pick will re-enter the NFL draft next year? And what do you think of this mess?
Do I think it's up in the air?
Real quick, Trev, could you just set the stage for people to let people know what he's talking about for those who maybe don't quite know what's going on?
Yeah, so the Cincinnati Bengals took Shamar Stewart in the first round at pick 17, I believe, the defensive tackle lineman from Texas A&M. And at the time we talked about it, bit of a reach, but they were going based off of how he projects to the pros. Everybody's been going through and signing their rookie contracts. He has yet to sign his. And then in the latest, because they're going through mandatory minicamp right now, latest that's happened is he called out the front office. And he said that it was essentially like a, I know what I'm worth type thing. And if you're not going to pay me that, it is what it is. So to sum it up, Tyler, do I think he re-enters? I have no idea. It was a bit of a reach pick anyways, and you're going based off of projection. You weren't going based off of production with him and through his entire career, not just in the 2024 season. What do I think of it? I think it's, one, the Bengals still continue to be a cheap organization. They still haven't even paid Trey Hendrickson yet, which if I'm weighing my options between the NFL sack leader from 2024 and a rookie who has already called out the front office before putting on a helmet, then I'm going to –
anything in college? Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to re-sign Trey Hendrickson first. That's where my mind would be. But second, it's one of those where I'm a big kind of, you got to be a proven commodity. And for somebody that has yet to take a snap within reason, if you're going to be putting up this big of a fuss about money before you've even stepped foot onto a practice field yet in that capacity, and you're already demanding more and more money and you're not satisfied with what that is, he's going to have one season of production. It's going to be the same thing next offseason. So if you don't want to deal with the headache, this is the one situation where if the Bengals want to continue to be cheap with this situation specifically, I don't hate it, but pay Trey Hendrickson, and then we can sit down and talk about Shamar Stewart.
What wasn't there something that he's upset about as far, it was like I saw this the other day. It was like it's a clause in the contract. It was like if they cut him before his contract is up, then his guaranteed money goes away or something like that.
They know that they signed a potential boom or bust guy,
right?
And they're trying to put language in the contract where they don't have to give him his guaranteed money if they cut him.
If he's a
which
bust.
is like, well, then you shouldn't have taken him in the first
round. You shouldn't have taken him.
Exactly. Guaranteed contracts. I mean, so that's a you problem.
Right, exactly.
So, I don't blame him. I mean, look, you picked me. If you were this worried about me being false, then you shouldn't have picked me. So, I mean, it's like, here's the thing is, it's some of the things he's saying, I'm like, dude, let your agent do that.
Right.
You know, like let him handle it. Let him be the bad guy. It's just kind of a bad look. But I think in my head, it's partly a bad look because he hasn't done anything like
Yeah.
in college.
Right.
Maybe I might feel a little differently if like a Harold Landry type college producer, if Mason Graham was saying the same thing and he was having the same, but if you got, this is the only guaranteed contract this kid knows he's going to have. Like, it's kind of like Marcus Freeman's mantra. We've got, one more guaranteed Saturday. After that, this is the only
Guaranteed contract
he knows he's going to get.
Sure.
What if he blows his knee out next week or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, this is the one contract he knows that's going to certainly set him up for the rest of his life. If he gets more, great. But I don't like the way sometimes he's going about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also kind of understand, because if you were that, again, and the whole structure of contracts was redone so that you don't have to worry about this type of stuff. It's why there's just kind of the pay scale and the language is kind of set up the way that it is. So you don't have as much of this. Because you remember back in the day, Vince, there was first round draft pick holdouts all the time.
All the time.
But it's different now. You don't see as much of this now because
it's set up like
the way the pay scale is set up.
Exactly.
It's just like Trev said, it's typical Bengals. There's
right.
The Bengals are the team going through this and not somebody else.
Here's my, if I am advising the player, right? And you decide to sit out for the season and go back into the draft and all of that. In my opinion, you also have to weigh, how far am I going to drop? Versus what can I make now, I guess is the way I would say it, because the NFL has proven, at least this year, that they're willing to let a guy fall for off the field concerns,
right,
a la the Sanders kid, right? So like, if you are somebody who is going to sit out and not honor the way where you were drafted, or however you want to look at it, right? Because I'm not saying I'm not on the player's side here, but I'm saying you have to weigh, okay, I've got first round money potentially. Yes, I'm taking a chance and this whole clause thing, but am I going to drop to like day 2, day 3? Like, where am I going to drop to, and what's that money look like? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
It's a risk, but I think you have to be willing to at least make them think that you're willing to do that.
Yeah,
sure.
For the Bengals, like, you really willing to just give up the 17th overall pick? That's really what you want to do? Just lose that 17th overall pick because of this? It's like, if you had this big of concerns about the kid, you had no business drafting him at 17.
Right.
You should have traded back 5, 6, 7 spots, got more draft capital, and then taken that kid.
Yeah.
That's on you. It's just it's typical Bengals stuff in my
opinion. I don't disagree with that at all. I'm just trying to look at it from both sides.
Well, from his standpoint, I mean, it's a risk for him,
right?
And how like, from a posturing standpoint, that's why it was smart for him to leave.
Yeah.
Instead of staying here, keep answering these questions, keep taking the shots in the organization. Like, look, they're not budging, so I'm just going to leave. And I get where he's coming from. It's not an easy situation. But it's the Bengals being the Bengals, man, in a lot of ways. And for him, it's like, to your point though, Vince, how far is he willing to take this?
Right.
Is he willing to take this to where he's back in the draft next year?
Right. It said he can go all the way to like November 11th or something like that and still sign the contract.
Yeah.
But that's a long ways away, man. Like, the season's not over on November, but like, you're pretty far into it.
You think about trading him? Like, well, I don't know what the rules are. Can you trade a first round pick? Right? I mean, I think you can. You can trade a first round pick whenever you want, right?
You own his rights, right? That's what they usually do on draft day. You own the rights.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's where his lack of production in college may come back to bite him.
Yes,
exactly. Because you don't know who else viewed him as a first round pick.
Exactly, right. And then you're going to have a year off of football. Compounded with your lack of production in college. That's risky, dude.
Yeah, it's real risky. Yeah.
It'll end up getting resolved. I don't think it's going to go to that. I think the Bengals don't want to have to just lose that pick. So they'll eventually get something done. There'll be some sort of compromise made.
Yeah.
It's just a bad look.
Right.
It's a bad look for a cheap organization, a notoriously cheap organization. So, yeah.
ND, it just means more. Coach BD, if you were coaching a statue quarterback but had a great running back and 2 elite outside targets, would you prefer an elite run blocking offensive guard or good pass pro offensive guard running the Penn State offense?
Oh, boy.
There's a lot here. There's a lot to
Yeah.
digest
So
here.
if I was a statue quarterback but had a great running back and 2 elite outside targets, would you prefer elite run blocking OG or good pass pro OG running the PSU offense? I'd rather have good pass pro. If I've got elite outside targets, Andy Kotelnicki's offense will work really well if he's got elite outside targets.
Yeah.
So yeah, give me the good pass pro.
Yep.
If I'm reading that correctly.
Give him time, give the quarterback time and keep him upright. You know what I mean? Allow him to find those targets.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're a lead in pass pro, you're still going to be able to open some holes in the run game. You know what I mean?
For the most part, yeah, enough.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you're elite in pass pro, you should, if you have a great running back, you should still be able to do some stuff in the run game.
Yeah.
So Jason Smith, if you could only choose one state south of the Mason-Dixon line to have a pipeline to Notre Dame, which would you choose?
Texas.
Texas.
Easiest answer we've had so far. Yeah.
You guys are way more into recruiting than I am, but I also know Texas is a very large state with a lot of talent. And I was, during track season, I was looking at some of the track numbers coming out of Texas, and it's like, these guys should be trying out for the Olympics and they're in high school. Like there is just some elite talent.
And they produce quarterbacks, running backs, receivers,
absolutely,
tight ends, O-line, D-line.
Right.
Like they produce it all.
Across the board.
The problem is if you did Florida, it's like, well, you better hope that Florida can produce a quarterback. Now, what's ironic about that is they did for Notre Dame this year, but it's not a normal thing that Florida is putting out, a lot of good quarterbacks. And I just think Texas kids, it's a different fit that I think makes more sense than Florida, Georgia. Who do I'd consider North Carolina. I'd consider Florida. I'd consider Georgia. I think the combination of volume and balance of what it produces is it'd be too much to turn down.
Yeah. It's just so geographically big too. You know what I mean? I realize there's pockets.
I mean, so is Alaska, and I'm not recruiting Alaska.
No, I understand
it's
that.
The volume of players.
Correct. Because it's the volume of players, but also the size. Like, yeah, you can get more. You can shove some more volume in there.
Okay, I'm not even going to touch that one.
It's probably smart.
All right.
Tommy, what was Tommy Guns with the question? What was the biggest and most recognized stadium you guys ever got to play in? Mine is Bengal Stadium in Cincinnati. Play in?
I mean, the most recognized stadium I ever got to play in. I mean, I went to a Notre Dame football camp and we got to do 7-on-7 inside of the stadium. But like playing as a player,
it's all high school stadiums.
Yeah.
What about you, Vince?
I mean, so the same as Trevor. I went to Purdue football camp and we won the championship inside Ross-Ade Stadium. That was pretty cool. It was empty, but that was probably the coolest thing I ever got to do. But I'm not an elite player by any stretch of the imagination, nor was any team I was on. So it was all high school stadiums.
I got to play in Raven Stadium in college.
See, that's freaking awesome.
We played Frostburg State. It's the next year we played at RFK, but I didn't play in that game. But my sophomore year, I started at quarterback and we played Frostburg. So very disappointing ending, but it was also the year after they filmed the replacements there.
That's awesome. Okay.
And the field was torn up.
Oh,
it was so rough. It was super slick. It was really bad.
Yeah.
But I had a pretty good game. But we lost, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I wish I could have played in cooler stadiums, but that was never on the list. Unless if you're in Indiana and you're a high school player, because I'm playing college, right? The best you're going to be able to do is if you make the state championship game and you get to play where the Colts play. You know what I mean? Back when I was a kid, it was the RCA Dome.
That's what I was going to ask you. Wasn't it the RCA Dome when you were a kid? Yeah.
Yep, it was the RCA Dome, which wasn't great, but you're still playing where the Colts play. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So Lucas Oil is obviously much nicer than the RCA Dome, but never had it. Now they do high school regular season games get to be played in the RCA Dome, but that was not the case.
RCA Dome.
I'm sorry.
I wasn't trying to correct
Lucas
you. I
Oil.
just thought that maybe that stadium was still up, and that's
no. Lucas Oil. They play regular Indianapolis teams will play regular season games in Lucas Oil, which that's awesome. Like
That's
that is so freaking cool. Before, that was not the case. So, yeah. Salty Virginia Peanuts, which 3 quarterbacks are tops in the Big Ten, and in which order?
I have Aller number 1. I think he's, people are going to pick his game apart and all that, but he's still the most productive quarterback coming back. I think he's you don't make the college football semifinals if your quarterback stinks. So I'd probably put him number 1 for right now. After that, it's a little bit more of a toss-up for me. I mean, you've got Fernando Mendoza coming in from Indiana. You've got Dante Moore. Just talking about, I'm going to leave out anyone who's never played. So I'm not going to include Julian Sand. You got Luke Altmaier from Illinois. You've got Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, Dante from Cal, Dylan Raiola from Nebraska. You've got Nico at UCLA. He will not be in my top 3. You've got Mikey Keene at Michigan, Mark Gronowski at Iowa, Jaden Maeva at UCLA, Aiden Childs at Michigan State. Those are kind of the guys that would be in my conversation. So just kind of proven commodities. I'd probably go Luke Altmaier 2, just because he's a known commodity. Number 3, I'm going to project a little bit, he could end up being number 2. I'm going to project a little bit. I'm going to say, I'll say this: by the end of the year, I won't be shocked if the 3 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten are Drew Aller, Dante Moore, and Dylan Raiola. And don't sleep on my guy Aiden Childs either. But that's what I would kind of see. I just think going into the season, I can't put them there. Going into the season, you've got to go with Altmaier and some of the more proven commodities. But I'll say projecting to the end of the year, Aller, Dante, and Dylan Raiola. Actually, I'll say in order, Aller, Raiola, Dante. I think Raiola is going to have a good year. I never thought he was as good as they made him out to be. He's still a talented quarterback. And I think the team around him is going to be a lot better this year too. And the schedule's set up for him to perform well. What say you, Trev?
Yeah, going into the season, I'll say Aller 1, Altmaier 2, Mendoza 3. I really like the IU receiving core that they have come back with Omar Cooper Jr. and Elijah Surratt. End of the year, gosh, there could be a lot in there. I like the order that you went with for the end of the year, for sure.
Vince, you have any thoughts on this?
No, I'll leave that one to you guys.
Well, thank you.
I am not a Raiola fan. I'll just leave it.
I don't particularly like him, but I also think he's a talented quarterback. And, for a true freshman last year, he had some pretty good moments.
Sure. Salty, will Oklahoma improve their record last season, and will they make the CFP playoffs?
Will they improve their record? It's possible. I mean, they once again play a pretty tough schedule. Let me pull up their schedule. It is not easy. The good news is a couple of their tougher games they do get at home. Like they get Michigan at home, that helps. They get Auburn at home. So let's just say they start 4-0. They beat Illinois State. They beat Michigan at home. They beat Temple on the road, and they beat Auburn. Then they go Kent State. So they're 5-5, right? 5-0, right? Let's go Sooners. Boomer Sooner. Then they got to play Texas and Dallas, at South Carolina, home against Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, home against Missouri, home against LSU.
That is a tough second half.
Yeah.
Wow.
So do I think they'll be better than 6-6? I'm going to say yes. I think they'll be 7-5-ish, maybe even 8-4. Assuming they beat Michigan in week 2. If they don't beat Michigan in week 2, they may not even be 6-6 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I'll say they'll be one game better. So yeah, I'll say they improve their record. At the very least, they'll be 6-6 and win a bowl game as opposed to losing a bowl game. But college football playoff, I don't think Oklahoma sniffs the college football playoff.
Yeah.
I don't.
No. Yeah, I will confidently agree with you.
They may have a say in it like they did last year when they beat Alabama, but they're not going themselves. They'll just be in ruiner status because they do have LSU the last game of the season. So LSU could be knocking on the door of the playoff, and Oklahoma might have something to say about it. Like that's a possibility, but I don't see Oklahoma being in the mix.
Here's one that was on here's one that was on the message board the other day that I wanted to get your guys' takes on. I'll give mine. I want to get your guys' takes on. I got 2 more questions left before I got to leave. I know you guys are going to stay around, but I want to ask this one and then one other.
Salty wants to know if Brady Quinn should have won the Heisman Trophy in 2006.
So, what do you guys think? Trev, what's your do you have a stance on this? I know this is kind of like you were 9, but have you been able to go back and look? You may not have. If you don't, that's fine. Vince, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, kick it to Vince first.
Okay, I'm looking at who the finalists were in 2006, just to kind of refresh my memory as to who was in the conversation. Megatron came in 10th, by the way, in Heisman Trophy voting,
running a stinking
that year
triple option offense.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Still put up 6 catches for 1,200 yards and 15 freaking touchdowns.
100%.
That's a monster.
So Troy Smith is the one that won it that year at Ohio State. And I definitely don't agree with Troy Smith winning. Brady Quinn had better numbers across the board, and
Troy played on a better team. That's the difference.
Agreed. Yeah, and that's what the Heisman Trophy has become. It's the best player on the best team, or the quarterback on the best team. Things like that. Darren McFadden came in second, and he rushed for 1,600 yards that season, which that's yeoman's work, right? 14 touchdowns, 1,600 yards. On 284 attempts. He barely beat out Brady Quinn in voting.
Yeah.
Barely. Troy Smith ran away with it, guys.
Which is a freaking joke.
He had 2,540 points to Darren McFadden's 878 and Brady Quinn's 782. And then there's a drop off after that. I know I am biased, but I would have had Troy Smith third. And it would have been between McFadden and Quinn. And I think Quinn's number just blew everything out. And I would have gone with Quinn.
With all due respect to Troy Smith, he wouldn't even be my top 3.
Fair enough.
And I know that Ohio State fans are going to not like that. And he wasn't even the best player on that team. Not even close. I don't even know that he was the best player on that offense that season. I mean, Troy Smith was a nice player, but he was the epitome of the award goes to the starting quarterback on the best team in the country type of conversation. I mean, he put up nice numbers. He passed for 2,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 picks. He rushed for 204 yards and 1 touchdown. And, that was a really good Ohio State team. But, I'm sorry. I mean, Ted Ginn was their best player. And Antonio Pittman was pretty flipping good on that team too. And you look at Brady had to carry that team, and Notre Dame was not a great team that year, but Brady's numbers were still significantly better than what Troy Smith's were. He threw for 3,400 yards, 37 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He ran for only 71 yards, but had 2 touchdowns. Troy Smith wasn't exactly a guy that was running around either. And a lot of people say, well, Troy Smith played really well against Michigan, and Brady did not play well against Michigan. And I'd say, okay, that's very fair. Troy played very well against Michigan, and Brady did not. But Troy Smith also went 12 of 22 for 115 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick against Penn State. And Brady Quinn went 25 of 36 for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns against Penn State. So, we could do that dance all day. What does Brady Quinn do at Ohio State with that town around him? Anthony Gonzalez and Ted Ginn and Antonio Pittman. What does then Troy Smith do at Notre Dame? I don't think Notre Dame's 10-2 if Troy Smith's their quarterback, with all due respect to Troy Smith. So yeah, I think Brady should have got. If we're going to go to a quarterback, I think the most outstanding player in college football that year was Darren McFadden. I probably would have voted for Darren McFadden, but I think Brady would have been pretty good too. And Darren McFadden, the thing about him too is he was pretty dynamic that year, and he was doing it while splitting carries. I mean, they had another 1,000-yard back that year, and I think that's something that kind of hurt Darren McFadden a little bit, was that he was not someone who put up the monster running back numbers like he did in 07. I mean, he was even more dynamic in 07, but he also didn't get a lot of those other opportunities. He had one kick return for a touchdown in 06, but only returned 10 kicks. He didn't return punts. He didn't catch the ball, but like 11 times. I think the fact Felix Jones, I think, cost Darren McFadden a Heisman Trophy. Because, like, well, yeah,
that
he
was a heck
good,
of a 1-2 punch, man, with those two. Yeah, I remember that.
And Felix Jones, I mean, Darren McFadden averaged like 5.8 yards a carry. Yeah, 5.8 yards a carry. I think Felix Jones was like 7 yards a carry. So it's like, dude, was he even the best running back on his team? I remember hearing people say that. It was not many people, and it was kind of an outlandish thing to say, but I think that hurt him. And that's also why I probably still would have voted for Brady over Darren McFadden, because if you took Darren McFadden off of Arkansas's team, they still got freaking Felix Jones.
And Peyton Hillis.
Yeah. You take Brady Quinn off of Notre Dame, and they're maybe a bowl team. Maybe. When you consider who the backup quarterback was, David Wolke? Or freshman Demetrius Jones and freshman Zach Frazier. I mean, like, that's a different team. He was Notre Dame that year when you consider how bad their O-line and their defense especially was that season. So I think Brady was the most valuable player. I think Darren McFadden was probably the most outstanding player. And then what holds more value to you as a voter between those two things? So,
no.
But with all due respect to Troy Smith, he's not even in my top three. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I mean, for what they meant to the team and the numbers they put up, I think Colt Brennan has an argument to be up there too. Yeah. Not above Quinn or any of those guys. Dude. Colt Brennan put up video game.
Yeah.
Games.
But like Ray Rice that year had 1,700 yards rushing and 20 touchdowns on a Rutgers team that went 11-2.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably in my top three. If we're being, if we're talking about that, he was pretty flipping good, but he played at Rutgers, so nobody paid attention to what he was doing. But that Ray Rice team in 06, like, they just dominated the Big East that year because they just kept handing the ball off to Ray Rice. Mm-hmm. Remember, they also had Brian Leonard on that team too, who was like kind of like their running back, fullback, kind of number 2 running back, fullback type of guy. But yeah, I'd probably go with Brady because of what he meant to that team. But I think the most dynamic, most outstanding player that year was Darren McFadden. And honestly, if I was going to have to vote for a guy from Ohio State, I think a guy that I would have probably voted for that Ohio State team in 06, if I got to go for an offensive guy, is probably Ted Ginn, because he was pretty dynamic that year. I mean, he had 59 touchdowns, 781 yards, and 59 catches for 781 yards and 9 touchdowns. But he also had, a punt return for a touchdown. He had a kick return for a touchdown. So he was kind of a dynamic all-around player. He had, 706 total return yards, 781 receiving yards. He had over 1,400 total yards. He had 11 touchdowns, and he was just a dynamic player. And you guys remember the championship game that year. Ted Ginn takes the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, gets hurt. Ohio State was nothing after that. He was their best player. He was their most outstanding player, but he didn't put up big numbers, and he wasn't a quarterback. And that's why he wasn't in it. I don't even think he finished in the top 10. Let me look at that. I don't think Ted Ginn. Yeah, he didn't. So I mean, if I had to vote for an Ohio State guy, I would have gone with Ted Ginn. He was the most outstanding player on that Ohio State team.
Oh yeah,
in my view, not Troy Smith. And Troy Smith was a nice quarterback. He was a nice quarterback, but best player in college football. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, even the Miami Dolphins that year opted to take Ted Ginn over Brady Quinn.
Yep.
Never going to forget that.
Somebody's a little so bitter about that.
Yeah.
All right.
21 teams, I think, decided to take.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's it for me. Bench, you are in control of bringing those up. Appreciate y'all. You'll have a great weekend. I'll be back on Tuesday. Going to take a couple days off here.
Nice.
Do some family stuff, but enjoy the rest of the show, everybody. Hang around with the guys. Keep putting in some great questions. These two guys are going to crush it.
You know it. All right, we're going back to not the insane Zoom. So that's my first executive decision of the day. I've seen way too much of my own.
I'm glad. I'm glad
still here, Vince. Okay, I ain't gone yet, buddy.
Hey, I'm just saying, it was too much. It's like that.
I loved the Zoom. Don't worry.
Like when you go to like a hotel and they've got like that Zoom mirror, like for like shaving or whatever. Like, that's too close. I'll just use the regular mirror. Thanks. I don't need to see that. But anyway, so we'll go back to this. And so since I'm picking questions, this could get scary. Let's see what we got here. We've done some of these. So I guess I should have been back here to kind of get the lay of the land with where these questions are. Let's see. We've done a lot of these questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to go through and unstar some of these. Oh, did that one. Okay, here we go. So we'll do a salty question, and I'll let you. I'll read it. I'll let you answer it while I kind of clean some things up here. So, from Salty, he says, "Will Carson Beck be amongst the final four in the Heisman race?"
For me, no. Vince, you might have a different opinion on this, but I've been very open about how not high on Miami I am this year. Now, let me be clear. I don't think they're going to be 6-6. I don't think they're going to be horrible. I just don't view them as a playoff team. Carson Beck has a lot of questions, and that's a very different looking receiving core than what they had last year. We talked about it when we did the preview for them. They lost their top 5 pass catchers from last season, all over 500 yards. They lost an 1,000-yard rusher, and they lost Cam Ward. So when I go and I look at a guy like Carson Beck, I think he's going to put up good numbers because I think that's what the offense will dictate. He might get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because he is a big name. But like we just got done talking about with Heisman voting, a lot of what you do is dictated by the team's success, especially at the quarterback position. And I don't see Miami being there this year. So for me, it's a no. I don't see Carson Beck being a Final Four Heisman finalist, but I could be proven wrong. Because in the same light, I'm trying to think of who it might be ahead of him. I think both of the Jeremiahs, Jeremiah Smith and Jeremiah Love, have that opportunity to be ahead of him as long as Arch Manning doesn't have a colossal downfall, he's already going to be ahead of where Carson Beck was. And then there's always that player that people don't see coming, that worked their way up. So, no, I don't think he will be. What about you, Vince?
Yeah, I've never really been a huge Carson Beck fan, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think he makes great decisions. I think that he thrived off of the he thrived off the talent that he had at Georgia, and he's not going to have that kind of talent at Miami, in my opinion. And I think Notre Dame is going to make him look very pedestrian. Mm-hmm. And that's all it's going to take to push him out of the race for Heisman. I hate to say that he'll be out after week 1, but I think he'll be out after week 1. And I'm not saying a Notre Dame player is going to jump into that conversation, although Jeremiah Love is obviously already in that conversation. I've just never been a huge Carson Beck fan, and everything that you just outlined just leads me even more to that conclusion. I mean, we'll see what happens, obviously, in game number 1, and maybe he'll prove me wrong, but there's a reason that Georgia fans were more excited about Gunnar Stockton than they were about Carson Beck by the time they got to the game against Notre Dame. Now, I think that was a little much, saying the team's better with Stockton and all of those different things, but they saw enough of Carson Beck. Like they were done. And I think Miami fans might get to that point at some point as well. And that's definitely not a recipe for a Heisman candidacy.
Yep. I agree.
All right. Aiden Benami has a Pacers question. So the Pacers team feels exactly like our Notre Dame team last season. Everyone contributes, everyone battles, everyone excels at their role, and all team glory. I know you're a Pacers fan, so I'm going to let you just kind of wax poetic about the Pacers.
It's, in all seriousness, this has been a really fun postseason to watch for them. Yeah, you look at some of the ways that they've won. It's hard not to say that it like similar to what Notre Dame's run was last year. They beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl by double digits. They had a kick return for a touchdown. The game-ending interception that Christian Gray had turned into game-winning field goal by Mitch Jeter in the semifinals. The Pacers are absolutely – they've been a lot of fun to watch this postseason. And for me as a fan, it's also fun to say that, like, I got to watch Notre Dame play for a national title in January of this year, and then in June You know, I'm not going to try to paint this picture that I'm some diehard Indiana Pacers fan. For the last 2 years, I've kept an eye on them, and I've been watching them, especially in the postseason. They were in Eastern Conference Finals last year, and now they're playing for the NBA championship this year. And it also helps that Gainbridge Fieldhouse is a 10-minute drive from our apartment.
Nice.
So that is also a factor as well. But it's fun. They're really fun to keep track of, and they're doing it against a team that everybody deemed like impossible to beat. I think heading into this series, the Thunder were something like 24-1 against the Eastern Conference in the regular season, and their one loss came to a fully healthy Cavs team on the road. And the Cavs, I think, had the best record in the NBA. It was either them or the Thunder. So it's a lot of fun. And it's really cool for the city. Indianapolis has been doing a lot of fun stuff. So
there it is. And they feel like a fun team to root for.
They're so fun.
You know, to be honest with you, which is always a good thing. I like teams that are easy to root for, and this team appears to be that, which is awesome. So, All right, I think I got things kind of figured out back here. So let's just kind of roll through some of these at the top.
Let's do it.
Tristan, if you had to switch linebackers and cornerbacks, who would you put where and why?
Oh, my goodness.
It's a kind of a wild question. So obviously this is a fun question because I would never put linebackers on a wide receiver on the outside, but that's okay.
If I absolutely had to, because of his speed and athleticism, I would put Jalen Sneed at field corner. Because of his size, I would put Kingston at boundary corner. He's like 6'3". I mean, but then you also have Teddy Rizak, who's also super athletic. I mean, gosh. I mean, that's probably who I would put at corners. Nickel, I would just go back to what Mike Elko did in 2017 and put like Jaden Osbury at like Rover or something.
Osbury might move to corner for me. I think he's pretty athletic. You know, I don't know. He plays in space pretty well, so I might have him as one of my starting corners. That'd be the only difference for me as far as the corners who are now going to play.
That's where I'm having trouble.
Linebacker, like those guys are not made to play linebacker.
No,
I mean, look, Christian Gray and Moore, they're not afraid to get their noses dirty. They're not afraid to hit, things like that. But you're asking them to do some things that they've clearly never done before.
Yeah, I mean, it's the size for me that I have a lot of trouble with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to, I guess I would just move the two starting corners back inside and have, I guess Leonard Moore play the will and put Christian Gray at the mic.
Right.
That's probably what I'd do. That's tough.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, here's one from Henry Reese. Best food to put on the grill, and what are your sides with it?
I mean, is there a bad food to put on the grill?
There's not. That is the correct answer. There's not bad food to put on the grill.
Look, man, especially now that it's summertime, like brats, dogs, burgers, chicken. I'm honestly, this might be unpopular for some. I'm more of like a cast iron skillet or stainless steel pan for steak than I am on the grill.
Interesting.
Yep. But I mean, like burgers, dogs, brats on the grill are fantastic. Sides, I love the like grilled roasted potatoes that you can do. Wrap mine up in tinfoil. My buddy Kane calls them hobo potatoes.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
But they're really good.
Yep.
Corn on the grill is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
I just like a good corn on the cob anyway. And you put it on the grill, you boil. I don't care. I'm a big fan of corn on the cob. I'm easy, man. Give me a juicy burger with some cheese and some seasoning, and I'm going to town. Like that's where I'm at. Father's Day present, got the griddle grill.
Come on.
So,
like a Blackstone?
Yes. It's exactly a Blackstone. Very excited to get that one moving. Haven't had a chance to like put it together and like do the whole thing yet. But that's the present, and like we're talking, I'm gonna do some breakfast out there, some pancakes and bacon, all that fun stuff. I'm very interested to see how the burgers and the dogs and all those. I'm kind of excited about the griddle.
Smash burgers on the Blackstone are going to be fantastic.
This is what I'm saying. I'm excited about it.
Call back from earlier. Downside about being in an apartment. is I don't have my own grill anymore. I want to get a smoker. I can't really get a Blackstone. So that is a downside.
It's a good call. That is a downside. I remember the days of the apartment when we weren't allowed to have grills and whatnot, on the deck or on the balcony and all, fire codes. Like, come on.
I know.
Come on.
Safety.
Right. All right. Here's one from Henry Reese. Who do you think enters the season on the hot seat in college football, and who ends the season on the hot seat?
Oh gosh. Yeah, Henry, we've covered a lot of different coaches so far. I mean, I think Lincoln Riley comes in on the hot seat this year. Brett Venables absolutely comes in on the hot seat this year. I'm trying to think of like outside of the box coaches that we might not think about ending the season on a hot seat.
Roger Dodger might be unhappy, but I think Lincoln Riley could end the season on the hot seat.
Yeah, I think so too. I would even make the argument that he somewhat comes in on the hot seat. He's digressed every year that he overall record-wise that he's been in Los Angeles. And so maybe not the hot seat per se. I definitely think it's starting to get warm. I think Brett Venables is very much on the hot seat. Mike Norvell's probably
he's got
in
a
that
hell of a
conversation.
we just talked about Oklahoma's schedule, right? Like, not only has he not really lived up to the expectations of what Oklahoma is in football, they've got a gauntlet at the end of the season. So is 7-5 going to keep his job? That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah,
that seat will definitely get hotter, right? Andrew Gilmore says, is Utah's coach on the hot seat? I don't think they would fire him, but maybe encouraged to retire if they underachieve.
potentially. I'm glad that Utah's finally done dancing around with the Cam Rising thing. They didn't bring him back for his legitimate, I think, 8th year of college football.
Seriously.
And so hopefully they can just move on and take a step forward from there. But again, Andrew, it's the Big 12, man. And, I know we've had some conversations in the chat about it, that it's just who knows what the Big 12 ends up being. Utah's always going to be sound on defense. If they can get their quarterback situation shored up, I absolutely think that they have the opportunity to not underachieve. I do think it's in the question, though. I do, especially with how open the Big 12 is. I don't think that's a bad take.
Fair enough. All right. I like it. That's good stuff. Let's see here. Let's stretch your mind a little bit more of the Power 4 conferences. Frank G says, which 5 teams in the Power 4 will make the biggest turnaround as a football program? This could be statistically. It could just be, they weren't in the national discussion. Now they are. I mean, the easy one for me would be Florida State, because they were so bad that they don't even have to win that many more games to have a major turnaround. So I think they would qualify as one of the 5 teams in the Power 4. What else do you think?
It depends on what your lens is for overall turnaround, because I think it's going to be relative to how bad the teams were last year. I think Purdue is poised for a big turnaround. Do I think they're going to be good? No, but last year, like we highlighted earlier in the show, they were terrible. But Andrew just brought it up in the chat. I like Barry Odom as the head coach. And I think on offense, outside of Devin Mockabee, this is a completely different looking team from top to bottom. And so I'm keeping my eye out on Purdue. I think Oklahoma State could have a turnaround. Honestly, like 3-9 is a bad season for Mike Gundy. Do I think Oklahoma State is in a position where they should be a program right now that should be talking about competing for national championships, making it back to the college football semifinals? No. They're definitely better than 3-9, especially a year removed playing for the Big 12 championship. So I'm keeping my eye out on them. Other turnarounds. Gosh, I mean, you kind of have to hope that Wisconsin would. I mean, going 5-7 at Wisconsin, Luke Fickles, that's another, going back to the hot seat question. I think he could be on the hot seat by the end of the year. If you're not bowl eligible at a program like Wisconsin, that's not going to cut it either. So, yeah, which 5 teams in the Power 5? So I guess who have we listed off? Florida State, Purdue, Oklahoma State. I think Wisconsin needs one. Some teams it's so – I mean, some teams it's so hard because a lot of the teams that are coming to my mind are kind of those like 7-5, like those 8-4 to 6-6 teams. So it's like, what does a turnaround look like for them? 10 wins?
Right.
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 So we've gotten this question a couple times before in the show. I don't think we're going to see an IU level turnaround this year. Like, I don't think you're going to see a team go from perennially one of the worst college football programs at the
make it the
FBS level
playoff.
to the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's going to be a little bit more tailored to, you know, maybe Purdue is at they're a 500 level team, but they're a team that's, you know, they're a good competition week over week. It's not okay, we're just going to beat this team by 30 this week.
Yeah.
So
what about the other direction? What about teams that, you know, pick a couple teams that were really, really good that may not be so good next year or this year coming up?
I'm going to stay consistent with what I thought. I'm still going to say Miami. There's a lot of people projecting them to make the playoffs. There's people ranking them in their preseason top 10. Look, with, you know, Xavier Restrepo and Davian Martinez and Cam Ward, who is the number 1 overall NFL draft pick, they didn't make the playoffs. I don't see that turning around with the receiving core they bring back. I like how they're built in the trenches. They have a transfer portal, or a secondary completely made up of transfer portal players. They lost 4 DBs to the portal between the winter and the spring this last offseason, who all played over 200 snaps. And they're completely remaking it in the portal. And so do I think they're going to be bad? No. But turnaround, it wouldn't shock me if they were out of playoff discussion in November again. So who knows? And then, I mean, statistically turnaround. They could end up being 10-2 or 9-3 or 8-4, but they're not averaging 43.9 points per game. They're not leading the country in passing yards per game, nothing like that. So I could see that.
All right. Here's an interesting one from Pete Weber. He says, so I assume it's the consensus agreement that we'd all be against the 3-year rule before entering the NFL. So obviously the current rule is you got to be out of high school for 3 years before you can enter the draft. I'm not sure why he's assuming that we would all be against that rule. I'm actually very much for the rule because the National Football League is just different than the NBA, for example. Like you need to physically mature. There are very few high school players that are ready to make the jump to the NFL. Like, I'm sure you could come up with 1 or 2, you know, that kind of a deal, but just not enough. And there would be too many kids trying to make that jump and foregoing college. And I just don't think it would work out well for them. So I'm absolutely in on the 3-year rule. If I'm understanding the question right, what do you think?
Yeah, Pete, if you're still in the chat, if you want to provide a little clarity there, but I'm 100% with you, Vince. Like, look, the NFL is just such like a grown man sport that it's just not something that physically, and I immediately go to the trenches. You know, you're thinking about some of these offensive linemen that come in to Notre Dame, and it's like, okay, like they're good size, like they're 6'4", 300 pounds as an incoming true freshman. That's good for college.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, think of somebody being a one and done in college. Like imagine Anthony Knapp being a true freshman All-American. He's 6'4", 290, and he wants to go to the league if they have like the NBA rule. And then the next week he's going and blocking Khalil Mack. Like that, it's just a completely. And I know I'm taking extremes here,
but still,
but it's you think about what that would mean in the trenches. I do think that some skilled positions could maybe like, and when I mean physically compete, but like the mental aspect of playing in college to the NFL is completely different. Physically, like a Jamar Chase could have probably competed in the NFL after his redshirt freshman season after that 2019 LSU year.
Jeremiah Smith is a really, really good wide receiver. He could probably play in the NFL. Yeah. And again, that's the exception, not the rule, though. You know what I mean? You're not changing this rule for the exceptions. Like that's not what you're doing. Yep. And it's not like you're taking food out of their mouth now with NIL and with the house agreement and all of those the house settlement. Like these kids are making money in college.
Yeah.
So you can't even make that argument. You can't even be like, well, you're preventing me from, making money in my career and all of these different. That doesn't even exist anymore. You're going to make some of these guys that think that they're NFL players that don't end up being NFL players. They're going to make more money in college than they ever will in the NFL. You're better off going to college and making some money as opposed to, your hopes and dreams of going to the NFL out of high school and not making anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, Quinn Ewers took a $2 million haircut to go to the league.
That's a really good point.
And he played in college for years.
Right.
So I'm with you.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a super chat here from Swan Dong. Thanks, Swan, for the super chat. Appreciate it. With Botello tearing his pectoral, do you think he will be productive when he comes back in 4 months? Is it possible for him to come back next year instead?
Potentially. I mean, that comes down to his health. Before I start thinking about his productivity, before I start thinking about his impact on the defense, I just want to see the kid be healthy.
Yeah.
To be completely honest with you, next year, maybe, but think about the state of the room then. Boubacar, barring a fully healthy season this year, will be a complete year removed or 2 years removed from his ACL injury. Bryce Young will be going into his junior year. Christopher Burgess will be going into his sophomore season. Yeah. Josh Burnham has the opportunity to come back if he wants to. I wouldn't see a need for it. If he wants to, then he provides veteran leadership, but I mean, he's already going into he's going into his 6th season of college.
Correct. And he was a freshman in 2020. So he gets the extra year, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So his 5th year would have been his COVID year because he played in 11 games as a freshman. He played in 11 games as a sophomore. He played in 13 games as a junior, and he played in 13 games as a senior. So he used his COVID year last year, and now he got a medical red shirt. The odds of him getting a second medical red shirt are very, very slim.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean?
If Notre Dame makes the run that we think that they're capable of, he'll be back by the end of October, potentially. And then I think it just comes down to, does he want to where does he see himself? Does he want to come back and try to work his way back into the rotation? Because we don't know what that landscape is going to look like for him. Because by the end of October, maybe Boubacar's back to fully healthy.
Right.
Maybe he's off and running. Bryce Young is doing his thing. Christopher Burgess might have worked his way into the rotation. This does bring up a good point, though, back to what we were talking about yesterday. It's all the more reason that guys like Josh Burnham have to step up in his kind of last chance U type of year into the breakout player he's capable of being. But Swan, above and beyond, above all else, I just want him to see him be healthy because he's caught some rough breaks. So just want to.
Yeah, I mean, if he's out for 4 months, like people are saying, this is the middle of June, so July, August, September, October. That's middle of October. If he's back at 100%, in 4 months, he could very easily contribute to this team, right? If he's playing at that level. If he's not quite ready and he comes back in November, I mean, you're still looking at a month and a half to 2 months worth of football that he could be that's almost like a trade deadline acquisition. If this team is rolling and then you add him to the mix, that could be a huge benefit to Notre Dame on defense, right? So I just don't know what Jordan Botello you're going to get. He was out most of last year. He's back. Now he's out again. What are you going to get from Jordan Botello? I don't know the answer to that.
This does beg the question, though. This is kind of the 4th injury of this type in the last calendar year almost. Jagasaw had it happen to him last camp. From my understanding, Gerby Lambert had a similar injury. Davian Dixon in the winter had this injury, pec injury, and now Botello has it as well. And it's all in the trenches.
Yeah. So
is there something that needs to be looked at here? Potentially, I think it opens up that can of worms as well. But yeah, Vince, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's just tough, and it sucks for him, obviously, for a multitude of reasons. All right, here's an interesting one from Josh Phillips. You're the defensive coordinator. Team is in the national title game down 3. The opponent has the ball, 3rd and 7, coming out of the 2-minute timeout. Need the ball back. What play are you calling on defense?
Gosh, I mean,
there's so many variables that we don't have.
I was just about to say, who are my players on defense?
Right.
So
you want to be you'll be the defensive coordinator of Notre Dame with this defense, okay? The defense that they're going to throw out there in 25.
Gosh, I'm probably sending some sort of pressure up the middle. I liked Al Golden's aggressive style on
too.
downs like that. I'm not talking like an all out, jailhouse blitz like what Van Gorder would do in like 14 or 15. Nothing like that. But send some sort of pressure. But yeah, Josh, it's such a loaded question because like how was the flow of the game up to this point? Was my D-line able to get home with any sort of pressure? Because then maybe I'm more comfortable dropping 7. Was my D-line struggling to get home? Were any of my blitzes getting home? Was I having a corner that was picked on most of that game? Because then maybe I'm cheating the safety over a little bit. That's what I think Notre Dame could have done on that third down play against Ohio State. Don't leave Christian Gray out on an island against Jeremiah Smith. Have Xavier Watts over top of him instead of bringing him down in the box. So there's a lot of different things that we could do. But, I mean, just high level, I would probably just say I would bring one additional person up the middle, speed up the internal clock of the quarterback a little bit. And then if I have Notre Dame secondary, I'm trusting Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, and Don Schuler.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot, actually. I like that a lot. All right. Here's an interesting one from Salty. Will Memphis win more games than any other team in Tennessee?
Oh, gosh, what's Memphis' schedule this upcoming season? I mean,
I didn't, obviously I have not had much of an opportunity to pay attention to the national landscape of college football. You and Brian are much better at that than I am. So I didn't know if Memphis was like one of those teams that everybody's talking about, at the group of 5 level, that all of a sudden they're going to make some sort of run.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this kind of comes down to what, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Memphis, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, Tennessee's football schedule this upcoming season, I mean, they got Syracuse at home. They're at Alabama. They're home against Arkansas. They're home against Georgia. They play Oklahoma. They play at Florida. And then Memphis, I just don't know the makeup of Memphis's team enough. I'll already chalk them up a loss to Navy at the end of the season. They play at home against Arkansas. But outside of that, I have no idea. Since we're having fun, Salty, I'll say sure. I'm not as high on Tennessee as what most people are this year. So
agreed.
I'll say sure.
Well, losing your quarterback, whether you like him or not, losing your quarterback the way you did, that definitely is going to hurt Tennessee, with the plans that they had and things that they were planning on doing. I mean, it was just late in the game to lose a guy like that. And when I say a guy like that, I mean a returning starter. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not huge on Nico either, but you still lost your starting quarterback that led you to the playoff. So, I mean, having to rebuild and trying to figure that out at that position is going to be, somewhat complicated, I would imagine. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But interesting question, Salty. So I appreciate that. Here's a quick one from Salty. Will both Miami and Texas A&M reach the college football playoff?
No.
How about this? Will either Miami or Texas A&M reach the college football playoff?
I think Texas A&M absolutely has a higher potential than what Miami does to reach the playoffs. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think the Aggies have a better opportunity to, with just who they have coming back, Elko into year 2. I like their offense. Truly, I do. They have 3,600 combined snaps returning on their offensive line. They got a lot of experience coming back. I like what their backfield is. I think their receiving core and Marcel Reed fit more of what Colin Klein wants to do on offense. For Texas A&M, the key there is going to be their secondary. If they can get one of Des Ricks or Will Lee to play, or Des Ricks or Julian Humphrey, the transfer from Georgia, if they get one of them to play at the level that their recruiting hype was, then I think they're going to be a pretty good team. So,
do you think, Miami has any kind of shot because they're in the ACC versus Texas A&M in the SEC?
Potentially. I don't see them winning the ACC. Like I have Clemson.
Sure.
To be honest, Miami is helped out by their schedule. They don't leave the state of Florida until November 1st, when I think they travel to SMU. So that is in their favor. But in those games, they have to play Florida. They have to host Notre Dame in week 1. Mind you, that doesn't really affect them when it comes to conference play. They could lose to Notre Dame, but theoretically still play in the ACC championship. But I don't think they beat Clemson in the ACC title game if they meet. And
Okay.
I don't think Miami will be ranked high enough to kind of get in like what SMU did this past year. They were ranked high enough, and then they lose the conference championship game. But the committee was saying we're not going to punish the losers of the conference championship. So I think that's where they'll be.
Archer has an interesting recruiting question. He says Ohio State got a commitment from a 2028 running back today. So that's somebody that just finished their freshman year of high school, by the way. In the current recruiting environment, what would you set the over-under on for a kid staying committed to the same school for 2.5 years?
I mean, what's the line?
Yeah.
I mean, 10 being the most confident, 1 being
yeah.
not
How about
confident.
instead of an over/under, let's do a scale of 1 to 10. The chances that they stay committed for 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, 10 being the most confident,
Yeah.
1 being not confident at all. I'd probably, if I had to set a line, probably set it at 3.5.
Yeah.
And I don't know who this kid is. I mean, he could be very bought into Ohio State, but look, man, when we're talking
also
about
15 years old,
right? Like when we're talking about somebody who's 15 years old, that will, if he's already getting looked at by Ohio State right now, the offers are going to continue to keep pouring in. And that's before money's being offered by a bunch of these different schools. Like it has nothing to do with Ohio State. It has nothing to do with the kid. Archer said it in his submission. Just it's the recruiting environment.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, look, my confidence level in somebody who commits today is not a 10 in the 2026 class. It's just there's so many moving pieces. So, I mean, a kid with 2.5 years left in high school.
That's so far away.
On the high end, it's a 4.
Yeah. He's got 2.5. Yeah. 2.5 years left in high school because he'll probably be an early enrollee, you would think. I mean, I've got freshman twins. They just finished their freshman year. If they tell me something now, it could be different 3 days from now. You know what I mean? Like I just don't trust the word of a 15-year-old knowing about what they're going to want to do when they're 18. That's nuts, whether it has to do with major college football or anything else like that. That is nuts to me. And you're right. In this recruiting environment, which is what Archer's asking about, and this is nothing anti-Ohio State or anti this kid or any of that. It has nothing to do with it. He just set us up with an Ohio State kid who committed. It's just a matter of 2.5 years is a really, really long time to be committed anywhere. Mm-hmm. And the vultures will come. And what is that going to look like? You know what I mean? Unless this kid's last name is Day, I don't know that he'll be able to hold on to that commitment. You know what I mean? Like that's just crazy. That is nuts. That first of all, that Ohio State would even take a commitment from a freshman, let alone like that. Like, is that a committable offer? Like, is he committing on his own, or does Ohio State know he's committing? Like, I just don't know that I'm taking a freshman commitment from anybody, you know, like, hey, man, why don't you check out your options for a little bit and then let's have a chat while, you know, during your sophomore year. I don't know. That's just wild to me. That's just absolutely wild to me.
Yep.
Here's one from Chief Brody about Notre Dame's passing attack. If Notre Dame has a passing record this season and it is broken, what is it? It could be a season, a game, career, whatever. What record do you think has a chance of falling? I pulled this up earlier.
Okay.
So here are the number 1 rankings. And I'm going, he said offensive. He said passing though, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the quarterbacks. Okay. Yep. So here are the records right now. Brady Quinn for a career has 11,762 yards. No quarterback is going to hit that this year. Okay. Brady Quinn also holds the single season record with 3,919 yards in 2005. Okay. So just shy of 4,000 yards. Joe Theismann has the single game yardage record with 526.
Okay.
That's a lot. Do you know who number 2 is out of curiosity?
Jack Cohn at 509.
Look at you. Did you look it up or did you just know that?
We talked about it yesterday. I cheated.
Dang it. Okay. Because I remember when it happened, but I had totally forgotten that it happened. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, that's wild all by itself. Okay. Passing touchdowns, career. Brady Quinn's got 95. Obviously, that's not getting broken this year. Single season is 37 by Quinn, and in a single game is 6 by Brady Quinn against BYU.
Gosh, if
Are any of those going down?
I think the most likely, because of the amount of games played, is the passing yards.
Agreed.
I mean, if let's just say Notre Dame plays in 16 games, then that means that CJ Carr will essentially have to average 250 yards a game, or Kenny Minchie. And that is possible. But then it also begs the question of, one, the level of competition you're going to face in the playoffs will be significantly greater than what you're going to face in the regular season. Also, with that being said, he's going to have a good amount of games over 250, because I don't. There will be some games where he's not playing in much of the second half.
That's a good point.
So that's another factor that comes into it. For me, I think if there's going to be a passing record broken, it's going to be one of the like not sexy ones. Like it's going to be like most yards per attempt, in a single season, or it's going to be like completion percentage or something. Like I don't know if it's going to be any of those. Like career, I mean, look, what did you say Quinn's record was for passing yards in a career?
It's 11,762.
I mean, both quarterbacks, if my memory served me correct, like have what, 3? I mean, technically CJ Carr has 4 years of eligibility left, but I don't see him coming back for a 5th year. Kenny has 3. So let's just say they do that in 3. That means in 3 consecutive seasons, they pass for 3,900 yards. Yeah. Doable, but I'm willing to bet that if Kenny or CJ pass for 3,900 yards in back-to-back seasons, they're not coming back for the 3rd one.
Right. I think that's fair.
And so passing yards, probably no. I mean, maybe if they get into some sort of shootout game, potentially the single game passing yards, but that's a lot, man. Like that's, I mean, yeah. I mean, Notre Dame got into a shootout with USC, and I don't think Riley Leonard went over 200 because the rushing attack is just that good.
Right.
So for me, it'd be completion percentage or yards per attempt.
Yeah.
If I had to say one.
And I don't even know what those are, because what I'm looking at only has like the sexy numbers, career, single season, like that kind of stuff for yards and touchdowns. The single game one is interesting. I hope that's not the case, because you're right. I think it does have to be a shootout. Brady Quinn, of the top 10 single game yardages, Brady Quinn owns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, which I thought was interesting. The only one I could see of the quote unquote sexy numbers would be the single season yardage. Does one of them hit 4,000 yards? That would be pretty impressive if they ended up doing that. But if you look at, some of the yardages that have been single season, I mean, obviously Jimmy Clausen is second, and he's second by about 200 yards. But then Everett Golson is third. And then Brady Quinn's got another year at 4th. And then Tommy Reese is 5th with 3,200. So, I mean, I could see whoever the quarterback is, I could see them being on this list of the top 10 for sure. I don't know if they'll be able to eclipse 3,900. That's going to be the biggest issue, right? I mean, that's a lot of yards. That's a lot of yards. I would not predict that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I would just say if one is going to break, that would be the one to break, because I don't think either one of them is throwing for 38 touchdowns either.
No,
which would be the touchdown record in a season. So I don't see that happening. Although Ian Book did throw for 34 in 2019, so that's a lot of touchdowns. I'll give him that. All right, a few more questions, and then I'm going to take a quick break before I come back for another show at 5:00.
There we go.
Gotta, hit the bathroom and maybe grab a sandwich, something like that. But
okay,
let's see here. Let's see where we're at. This is interesting, and I don't know. You can go anywhere you want with this one, but PA Irish guy says you have 3 games to make someone who's never seen a college football game a fan. What 3 games are you going to pick?
The 2017 Rose Bowl with Georgia, Oklahoma. Oh my goodness. I mean, even the 2019 Clemson, Ohio State playoff game was electric. The Penn State Notre Dame Orange Bowl from this
93?
past season.
Oh, this past season.
Yeah, I mean, just
What
to make
about-
somebody.
Let's say
There are
Texas,
so many.
Texas USC 05.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame was on the losing end, but I mean, Notre Dame USC 2005.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is just to make somebody a PA Irish guy. I don't know if you're still in the chat, but like to make somebody a Notre Dame fan, or just to make somebody a fan of college football.
Yeah, good call.
I mean, if it's a Notre Dame fan, I would go the Penn State game from this year, from this past season. I mean, there's been some
Florida
crazy
State,
ones.
Notre Dame 93.
Yeah,
would be one for Notre Dame.
Yep. Miami 88.
Yeah, that's probably that's pretty good top three.
Yep. But I mean, see, I thought about it. Joe M, I saw you put it in the chat like 2012 Notre Dame Stanford. If I wanted to make somebody a college football fan or a Notre Dame fan, I don't know if I would pick one that was that low scoring.
That wasn't a great game. Like, it was a great ending. It was a great goal line stand. It was not a great game.
Yep. I mean, 2013 Iron Bowl with the kick six, if we're just talking about college football fan.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many good ones, man. There's a lot. The 2019 Alabama LSU game in Tuscaloosa was nuts. But that would set an unrealistic expectation because those were like close to two NFL teams. I mean, the amount of talent that was on either side of the field, those offenses were ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, even the defense. Alabama's two starting corners in that game were Trayvon Diggs and Pat Surtain.
Right. Here's an interesting one from Anthony, and I'm pulling him up because I don't think we've seen a bunch from him, although he's got the Han Solo avatar, so kudos to you, Anthony. If Brandon Wimbush or Malik Zaire were the quarterback last year, do you think the team gets to the title game?
I think if Malik was the starting quarterback last year, yes. Brandon, it's tough because, I mean, which version of him are we getting? Is it the one after the quarterback coach just completely botched his development,
right,
and just made him essentially a runner? I mean, with Malik's skill set, that kind of would have handled the pass protection inefficiencies that they had that made Riley Leonard have to scramble. But Malik was a much more talented passer than what Riley Leonard was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what type of season does Chris Mitchell have if Malik Zaire is a starting quarterback? I think if Brandon Wimbush is a starting quarterback, the receivers' production looks very similar to what it did last season. You know, but with Malik at quarterback, I would have been interested to see what Chris Mitchell does. Does Jaden Greathouse get targeted more than what he was? Who knows? But I would say definite yes with Malik, TBD on Brandon Wimbush.
When I first saw this question, I wanted to be like, no, Riley Leonard was a unicorn. Like, he's the one, he willed them there. He did all these things. And to a degree, that's accurate, right? Listening to you got me kind of on the side of Malik Zaire because I do remember how good he was before he got hurt, right?
Man.
I mean, he was so good. Like, I would have loved to see what that team could have done with him all season as the quarterback. And then that's not taking anything away from the guy that took over for him and what they were able to do. But Malik Zaire as the quarterback that entire year before he gets hurt, man, that would have been fun to watch.
Yeah.
That would have been fun to watch. So I do think Malik Zaire gets him there. I don't think Brandon Wimbush gets him there. And this is coming from a guy, when Brandon Wimbush got to Notre Dame, I thought Brandon Wimbush was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in Notre Dame history. Like, I was very excited about who Brandon Wimbush was, and it just did not go that direction at all for a myriad of reasons. I mean, once he started spiking, swing passes into the dirt, like it was so over at that point, and it just stunk. Because I was a huge Brandon Wimbush fan, no doubt about it. So that was tough. That was tough. So I'll agree with you. I think Malik gets him there. I just don't think Brandon does, just based on the way things kind of went down with him. But he's still one of my favorite guys, or was my favorite guy going in. So, all right, I think that is gonna do it for this edition of the Friday Free for All Mailbag. Trevor, again, if you're not a member of the message board, I think you got to make sure that you get on it. boards.irishbreakdown.com. All kinds of good stuff over there. All kinds of intel. There were a couple of questions in the mailbag that are really, those are message board type questions,
Yeah.
and so you want to take it over there and check it out. The intel will be good, and especially with this upcoming weekend. We had a question about, is this the best recruiting weekend of the year? Arguably so. And if you want to know how that goes, you better be jumping on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. Obviously, give us a thumbs up. Give us a subscription to, subscribe to our channel, whether you're listening on a podcast, whether you're watching it on YouTube. Subscribe, rate, review, all those fun things. It really does help us out. We really appreciate it. And of course, check out the stuff over at irishbreakdown.com too. All that is free. You can check out all that good stuff, and you want to make sure get that traffic up there and check it out. People want to know what kind of sandwich I'm making. Probably just a quick PB&J, because that's about all I got time for. So that is how that is going to go. So for Brian, who left us a little bit early, and Trevor, I'm Vince. We will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown podcast. And Trevor and I, hopefully, will have a great story for you from Monday. I'll just leave it at that. We're going to be hanging out all day. Hopefully, it ends well. We'll see how it goes. So here we go. So everybody have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week on the Irish Breakdown podcast, everybody.